Chapter 112. When stood by the bed and looked up at Siyu. He asked curiously, "Where's Mommy?" He had not seen his mother since he woke up. "Where did she go?" Siyu said. "She probably went to buy breakfast." When nodded, indicating that he understood. Siyu asked softly, "Do you want to come up?" When thought for a moment and pushed the stool to the side of the bed. He stepped on the stool and climbed onto the bed before sitting down. He wanted to cross his legs, but his short and fat legs made it impossible for him to do so. He could only settle for the next best thing. When looked at the cast on his body with a worried and guilty expression. Finally, he lowered his head and apologized. "I'm sorry. He should not have been so willful. He was still a child and should not have done such dangerous things and implicated others. Thank you. If it were not for Siyu, he would not have only suffered some internal injuries. It was Siyu who had suffered for him." Siyu instinctively wanted to rub Wen's head, but the moment he moved his hand, he felt a piercing pain. He had no choice but to give up. He smiled gently and said, "It's a father's responsibility to protect his child." When looked up at him, his little mouth moved, but in the end, he did not say anything. Siyu was not disappointed, but he felt that he could talk to Wen. "I also want to apologize to Wen. When I found out that you were my son, I did not come clean with you immediately. Instead, I hid it from you and approached you with ulterior motives. It's right for you to be angry with me. I know that I was wrong. Can you forgive Daddy? I won't snatch Mommy away from you. I'll protect Mommy with you, okay?" He had always thought that during this period of time, when one was uncomfortable with him and refused to accept him. Firstly, she was angry at him for lying to her. Secondly, she was afraid that he would snatch away Fu Yunruo or take her away from Fu Yunruo. The third reason was that Fu Yunruo had explained to Wen. He always thought that Wen was angry for the first two reasons. Wen looked away and said shyly, "That's not it. This was only one of the reasons." What he cared about the most was why he and his mother had never seen Siyu appear in their previous life. However, that was all in his previous life. The trajectory of this life had been different from the moment he was born. He could no longer pursue the matter. To the Siyu of this life, he still didn't know anything. Everything would never happen. Wen shouldn't have blamed Siyu for what happened in his previous life. He should have separated the two lives. However, he was used to being awkward. For a moment, Wen couldn't say those two words and wrung her fingers helplessly. When Siyu saw this, he coaxed her. "Yes, Wen isn't angry at Daddy. You just can't say Daddy because you've never called me that before. It's okay. You can call me that when you're able to accept it." Siyu didn't insist. He knew in his heart that Wen only wanted to treat him like a father. However, he still felt a little regretful. He wanted to hear Wen change the way she addressed him, but he couldn't bear to force her. Wen lowered her head and didn't say a word. When Fu Yun returned to the ward with breakfast, she panicked when she didn't see Wen. Fortunately, she remembered that Siyu was in the other room and hurried over. After knocking on the door, she saw Wen sitting on Siyu's bed. The two of them were facing each other. Wen heard the noise and turned around. When he saw Fu Yun, his eyes lit up. "Mommy!" He stood up and wanted to jump off the bed and run over. Fu Yun hurriedly stopped him. "Don't move." The doctor had said that Wen couldn't jump around. Otherwise, his internal injuries would worsen. She quickened her steps and walked to the side of the bed. "Don't move around." Wen was hugged by Fu Yun and instantly became very obedient. "I'm not moving around." "Okay." Wen is the most obedient. She inadvertently looked up and met Siyu's smiling eyes. Fu Yun thought of the embarrassing incident in the morning, and her face instantly turned hot. She hurriedly looked away and lowered her head to ask Wen, "Have you brushed your teeth and washed your face?" "No." Hence, Fu Yun carried Wen to the bathroom and squeezed out some toothpaste for him. She filled a cup of water and handed it to Wen. Fu Yun thought of Siyu, who was still lying on the bed. She thought that his hands were injured and that he definitely hadn't washed up. After hesitating for a moment, she still walked out and asked, "Have you washed up?" Siyu said softly, "No." Fu Yun helped Siyu up and helped him to the bathroom before opening the new toothbrush. Siyu's hands couldn't move, so Fu Yun could only help him brush his teeth with the toothbrush handle. It was her first time brushing an adult's teeth like this. so her technique was very unfamiliar. Fortunately, with Siyu's cooperation, she didn't accidentally poke his teeth. When one looked up while brushing his teeth, he saw that Uncle Yu and his mother were very close to each other, almost sticking together. He was very unhappy, but when he saw the bandages on the two plaster upper bodies, his unhappiness was immediately eliminated. Uncle Yu was injured and couldn't take care of himself because of him. His mother also took care of him because of him. When one finished rinsing his mouth and shouted, "Mom, I'm done brushing my teeth." "Oh, okay," right away. Fu Yun finished brushing Siyu's teeth and put down the toothbrush and cup. Then, she turned around and washed the towel for one to wipe his face. When one raised her head, and her little cheeks were rosy from rubbing. "It's done." Fu Yun changed a new towel and used it to wipe Siyu's face with a bang. Siyu was much taller than her. Even if he lowered his head cooperatively, Fu Yun stood on her tiptoes and raised her hand to help wash his face. When one was just happy that his mother valued him the most, but when he looked up, he saw that they were very close to each other again. He pouted and felt that his mother had been snatched away. Fu Yun didn't know that when one was thinking so much. After she tidied up the two of them, she brought them out of the bathroom and sat down to eat breakfast. As expected, Fu Yun fed Siyu breakfast again. When one ate by himself today, when he saw Siyu being taken care of by his mother like a baby, he suddenly felt that the breakfast in his mouth didn't taste good. After breakfast, the doctor came to patrol the room. Dr. Xiaoming checked Siyu's body and changed his dressing. 2 big bowls of black medicine were also sent over. Internal injuries would recover faster with traditional Chinese medicine, and there wouldn't be any sequelae. When one was also forced to drink a big bowl of medicine, he lay there helplessly and felt that he was surrounded by bitterness. Dr. Xiaoming suggested, "It's better to let the child lie down more and sleep more. He will recover faster." Fu Yun had no reason to disobey, so she quickly nodded in agreement. Siyu was even more immobile. Fu Yun walked around and finally carried Wenwan to Siyu's bed so that the father and son could recuperate together. The bed wasn't small, so one could lie down on it. If he was bored, he could even chat with him. Siyu was more than happy to do so. The family of 3 stayed in the room, and their relationship quickly warmed up. Siyu felt that this injury was worth it. The 2 most important people in his life were by his side, and his life was very complete. However, the family of 3's world was soon broken. At 10 o'clock, the ward became lively. When Yuan Xian and the rest came to the hospital to visit, they were caught red-handed by Chang Zhuyu, who was waiting for them. Siyu had already instructed that other than Yuan Xian and Tian, he wouldn't see anyone else, especially Chang Zhuyu. He couldn't even reveal any information about the ward. The Xi family was the major shareholder of this hospital, and it was managed by the Meng family. Chang Zhuyu came early in the morning, but not only was he unable to get any information, he wasn't even allowed to enter the ward. There were even bodyguards guarding the ward. How could Yuan Xian be threatened by Chang Zhuyu? He asked the bodyguards to stop him and went up himself. However, he stopped Chang Zhuyu. He didn't expect Fu Zonghong to be there. He had directly checked into the ward last night. Although it wasn't on the same floor as Siyu and the rest, it was a coincidence that they bumped into each other. Yuan Xian took into account that he was Fu Yun's biological father, so he didn't ask the bodyguards to throw him out. However, considering the bad relationship between the father and daughter, Yuan Xian didn't want to bring him up rashly. Hence, he called Fu Yun first to ask. The news that Fu Zonghong had stayed in the ward last night quickly reached Fu Yun's ears. At first, Fu Yun thought that Fu Zonghong was hospitalized because he wanted to see Wenwan. However, the news from the hospital said that Fu Zonghong's health wasn't very good and he needed a checkup. Fu Yun thought about the original novel. Even if he didn't die because of her death in this life, was there something wrong with his body? Fu Yun hesitated, but she still said to Siyu, "Let's see him. Maybe he didn't come here for the reason you think he did." Fu Yun looked at Wenwan. "Wenwan, he wants to see you. Do you want to see him?" In the end, Fu Yunrua left the decision to Wenwan. Wenwan thought about it and nodded. Let's see what he's here for. If he was here to plead for Feng Shui, then she would sever all ties with him. Seeing this, Fu Yun agreed in the end. Hence, when Yuan Xian came up, there was an unwelcome person standing beside him. Fu Yun's gaze was indifferent. Fu Zonghong looked at Wenwan and asked her about the situation in detail. Only then did he feel relieved. Wenwan looked at Fu Zonghong. They hadn't seen each other for a while, and he seemed to have aged a lot. He didn't look too good either. Hence, she said, you have to take care of yourself too. Fu Zonghong was flattered and replied, I'll take care. Wenwan thought about how the Fu Corporation would eventually become the Fong Corporation. He rolled his eyes and asked innocently, the bad guy who caused me to fall from such a high place has been arrested. Will you help the bad guy get away with it? Bad guys are so scary. Fu Zonghong's expression changed for a moment before he said solemnly, no, I won't. Who dares to harm Wenwan? Grandpa will take revenge for you. Don't be afraid. Fu Yun only glanced at him and didn't have any other reaction. Yuan Xian noticed Siyu's expression and immediately understood. He said solemnly, Chairman Fu, the evidence is all here. We've already submitted a copy to the police station. We'll officially press charges in 3 days. Fu Zonghong took the document and looked at the evidence carefully. There was evidence to prove that Wen's accident had something to do with Feng Shui. There was a detailed investigation of how Feng Shui led her fans to harm Wenwan in the end. Even though she didn't directly pay for the culprit, Fu Zonghong was still greatly affected. He almost couldn't stand straight. If Feng Shui didn't even let a child off, how vicious could she be? It was simply chilling. After all these years, he had actually misjudged her. His good granddaughter was only 4 or 5 years old, but she already had such bad intentions towards him. Where did her bad intentions come from? It could only be Yun Ruo. It could only be because of the Fu family. Then, all these years, wouldn't his daughter be surrounded by even more evil intentions? Did Fong Wanning know? Her daughter had such bad intentions towards his daughter. Fu Zonghong couldn't convince himself that Fong Wanning didn't know anything. He was more inclined to believe that it was because Fong Wanning had bad intentions towards Yun Ruo. Feng Shui was also influenced by Yun Ruo from a young age. Even if that wasn't the case, she had stayed at home and watched over the 2 children. How could she not have seen it? She was trying to cover up the truth to protect her daughter. She was even trying to distort the truth. After all these years, had he actually misjudged her? Fu Zonghong thought about how Fu Yun Ruo had cried and complained since they were young. In the end, she was hysterical, but Fu Zonghong looked at Fu Yun Ruo, but he only saw an indifferent face. There was no sadness or joy. After all these years, she must have lost all hope in him, right? Fu Zonghong clutched his chest. His heart was in pain. He panted violently. In the end, his vision turned black and he fell backwards. Yuan Xian happened to be at the side and quickly caught him. Chairman Fu, are you okay? Yuan Xian was shocked. It couldn't be, right? He was so weak that he couldn't even stand looking at some evidence. Seeing this, Fu Yun Ruo quickly called the doctor over. No matter who this person was, she couldn't just sit back and watch someone collapse in front of her. This happened to be a hospital. The doctor came quickly and took him away. Yuan Xian looked at Siyu and asked tentatively, shall I go and take a look? Fu Yun Ruo didn't express her opinion, so Yuan Xian followed her out. Fu Yun Ruo took the document and looked at the information inside. You found the evidence so quickly? Siyu responded. She didn't say that the chat records were real, but they didn't find out that the person behind this was Feng Shui Ruo. They were the ones who made this connection into evidence. The facts prove that they hadn't wronged her. However, this evidence can only charge her with instigation. She couldn't even be considered an accomplice because there was no monetary exchange between them and she didn't directly ask others to do bad things. She didn't provide any help either. She only instigated. No wonder she was so fearless. That person directly took the blame for himself and refused to admit that Feng Shui Ruo asked him to do it, but even so, he could still get her to give a heavy sentence. Fu Yun Ruo closed the document. That's enough. Feng Shui Ruo was such a proud person. As long as she was convicted, it would become a stain on her record that couldn't be washed away. It would be the biggest punishment for her. The Chang family wouldn't accept a female head of the family who had been in jail and harmed people, right? Looking at Fu Zonghong, he wouldn't protect her anymore. Fu Yun Ruo looked at Siyu and said gratefully, "Thank you." Otherwise, She didn't know when she would have found the evidence. You don't have to be so polite with me. Siyu smiled. Leave these things to me. Don't let these things affect you. You and One just have to be happy. He had been careless this time, but there wouldn't be a next time. He would always protect them under his wings. Chapter 113. Yuan Xian came back an hour later. Fu Yun looked over, but before she could ask anything, Yuan Xian said, Chairman Fu's body is not suitable for extreme emotions. He needs to rest. Yuan Xian explained Fu Zonghong's situation in detail. He did not have any major problems like terminal illnesses, but he had a lot of minor problems. He was old after all, and he spent a lot of energy managing such a big company. It would not be a big problem for him to cultivate his body and mind. However, if he continued to be so emotional, it would affect his lifespan. Fu Yun thought about this. Fu Zonghong had died a long time ago in the original novel, so his body was not very good. Fu Yun felt complicated. No matter what, it was good that he was alive. She hoped that he would take care of his body. Seeing that Fu Yun did not mention meeting Fu Zonghong, Yuan Xian naturally changed the topic. He mentioned that the situation on the internet was one-sided. Siyu, Fu Yun, and Wen's fans were attacking Feng Shui's fans. Feng Shui and Feng Shui's brainless fans were being attacked by everyone. Because Chang Zhuyu made it clear that Feng Shui was innocent, the Chang family shares fell instantly. Apple Entertainment also sued Feng Shui in the name of Siyu and Wen. The court had already accepted the case, and the case was going through the process. Siyu directly sent a team of lawyers. With their ability, the outcome would not be unexpected. Feng Shui's outcome was already foreseeable. Fu Yun felt relieved when she heard this. She had never hated someone so much. If Wen and Siyu had not been so lucky, the consequences would have been unimaginable. If anything happened to Wen, she would die together with Feng Shui. In the future, no matter if she went to jail or something else, she deserved it. Fu Yun really wanted to handle Feng Shui's matter personally, but Siyu took over the matter and didn't let her get involved. Other than paying attention to the progress, she stayed in the hospital to take care of Siyu and Wen. When Fu Zonghong woke up in the ward, there was no one beside him except for a nurse wearing a mask. She noticed that Fu Zonghong had opened his eyes, so she said politely, Mr. Fu, you're awake. How are you feeling? As he asked, he pressed the bell beside the bed, ready to call the doctor over for a re-examination. Fu Zonghong did not see Fu Yun here and felt very upset. His heart was no longer as painful as it was before he fainted, so he said, I'm fine. However, his vitality had been damaged, and his complexion was sickly. Soon, a doctor came in. He gave Fu Zonghong a simple examination and explained his condition. Fu Zonghong did not take it to heart and asked, Did anyone come to see me before I woke up? No. Fu Zonghong was shocked. He fainted in front of Yun Ruo, but she did not even come to see him. Fu Zonghong could not help but think that his actions over the years had exhausted Yun Ruo's affection for him. After the doctor finished his examination, he gave a few instructions and left. The nurse brought in some medicine and a glass of water. Fu Zonghong looked dispirited and silently took the medicine. Mr. Fu, your phone? The nurse passed Fu Zonghong's phone to him. Fu Zonghong opened the phone and saw that there were more than 10 missed calls. Other than the special assistant, most of the calls were from Feng Wanting. He did not need to answer to know what she wanted to say. Fu Zonghong was expressionless. Then, he called his special assistant and asked him to come to the hospital. There were waves of people who wanted to visit Siyu and Wen, but most of them were rejected by Yuan Xian as they needed to rest. The fans online were very concerned about Siyu and Wen's health. Although the company's official account and their official account told them that they were fine, how could they be at ease without seeing it with their own eyes? Therefore, the fans left comments one after another, asking them to do a live broadcast or take some photos for them to feel at ease. In the end, Fu Yun recorded a video of them telling them that they were fine and uploaded it to her account. Wen was wearing a small hospital gown, but she did not have any external injuries. Therefore, the netizens were not worried. However, when they saw Siyu, they were all shocked. Even though they deliberately avoided the injury when they took the photos, The sharp-eyed netizens found clues and confirmed that Siyu was seriously injured. Their idol had never been injured so seriously, even when she was filming dangerous scenes. Although they all knew that their idol's injury was a result of saving someone's life, it was a hero's medal and they should be proud. However, if not for Feng Shui, Wenwan would not have been injured. Their idol would not have been injured. With this thought, they became even angrier at Feng Shui. Fu Yun had to take care of the adult and child and had to contact a group of friends. She could only take some time out every day to pay attention to the outside world. However, she did not even have that little time to pay attention to it. Uncle May and Aunt May rushed to the capital the next day after the call with them. Fu Yun could not leave, so she asked Qian Xingnan to go to the airport to pick her up before coming to the hospital. When Fu Yun saw Uncle May and Aunt May, she immediately felt wronged and could not help but lean against Aunt May. "Aunt May, I missed you so much." Aunt May's heart ached as she said, "We missed you too." Chapter 114. It had to be said that Uncle May and Aunt May's arrival made Fu Yun Ruo feel much more relaxed. Uncle May and Aunt May had brought a lot of things from their hometown from thousands of miles away, such as their own peanuts, peanut oil, dried sweet potatoes, dried radish, mushrooms, and so on. If it weren't for the fact that they didn't have enough people, they could have brought more. Wenwan was also very dependent on Uncle May and Aunt May, so he didn't stick to Fu Yun anymore. Instead, he acted like a spoiled child with Uncle May and Aunt May. Uncle May and Aunt May circled around Wenwan. They were obedient to him in every way, and there was nothing they could not do. Fu Yun felt much more relaxed. Yuan Xian was in charge of everything outside, but there were also police officers who came to record their statements. The Fu family didn't do anything. Only the Chang family, or more specifically, Chang Zhuyu, tried to use his connections to get Feng Shui released. However, with solid evidence and Siyu's connections, the case continued to be investigated step by step. Feng Wanning didn't expect her daughter to be so stupid. Not only did she not tell her, but she was also caught with evidence. All these years of teaching were in vain. She was hopelessly stupid. No matter how angry Feng Wanning was, she still had to think of a way to get her out. No matter what, she only had one daughter. If she was convicted, she would also be affected. Feng Wanning had been Madame Fu for so many years, so she had a few good friends. She asked them for help. However, no matter how good their relationship was, when it came to benefits, they would all reject her. Some of them even avoided her. One of the ladies even reminded her vaguely that it was better to look for Fu Zonghong instead of them. Indeed, the reason why these noble ladies maintained contact with Feng Wanping was because of the Fu family. Most of their families had friendly business dealings with the Fu family, and they were business partners. Now that Feng Shui had been in the detention center for so many days, Fu Zonghong didn't do anything. These upper-class ladies were all shrewd people. They understood Fu Zonghong's intentions and naturally wouldn't help Feng Wanning. To put it bluntly, without the Fu family and Fu Zonghong, Feng Wanning was nothing. They wouldn't even look at him. Feng Wanning also realized that she had been looking in the wrong direction for the past few days. She should have gone straight to Fu Zonghong. She had schemed and plotted so much and had been hypnotizing Fu Zonghong for so many years. She had finally managed to make Fu Zonghong favor her and her mother, but in the end, it was all ruined by Feng Shuerua. No, Fu Zonghong's heart must still be with her. He was just angry before. As long as she explained herself properly, he would not ignore it. Feng Wanning started to look for Fu Zonghong, but she realized that he hadn't been home for a few days. He didn't even pick up her calls. She started to panic when she couldn't get through to him. She went to the company and realized that Fu Zonghong hadn't been to the company for a few days. The company's business was temporarily handled by the vice president. Even his personal assistant wasn't in the company. Feng Wanning asked the vice president. Although the vice president was polite to her, he didn't tell her about Fu Zonghong's whereabouts. Feng Wanning returned home disappointed. She didn't expect to find Fu Zonghong already at home when she got home. Feng Wanning was surprised and happy. "Old Fu, where have you been these past few days? I couldn't find you anywhere." Fu Zonghong's expression was calm. After a few days of rest, Fu Zonghong's complexion was much better. Nothing could be seen on his face anymore. Feng Wanting expressed her concern. Then, she looked sad and anxious. "Old Fu, Your anger has subsided. Can you listen to my explanation? You've watched Shuerua grow up since she was young. Don't you understand her temperament? She doesn't even dare to step on an ant. How would she dare to lure others to hurt others? Moreover, Shuerua has always respected Yunrua since she was young. She secretly cried to me countless times. She wanted to be close sisters with her older sister. How could she do anything to hurt Yunrua and Wenwan? There must be some misunderstanding. You have to investigate further, in case someone maliciously misleads you. Fong Wanting's eyes were filled with tears. Shuerua has been locked up in the detention center for a few days. Can you bear to see her being wronged and suffering like this? Fu Zonghong's eyes flashed with pain. Although Fong Shuerua was not his biological daughter, a human's heart was made of flesh. His affection for her was no less than that for Yunrua. Under the circumstances where the evidence was conclusive, Fu Zonghong could not deceive himself no matter how hard he tried to find excuses for himself. Now, his biological daughter and stepdaughter were like fire and water. They could not coexist. He had to make a choice between the two. In the past, he had chosen Fong Wanting and Fong Shuerua. He had ignored the injustice that Yunrua had suffered. Now, he had chosen Yunrua and Wenwan. He hoped that he still had time to redeem himself. Fu Zonghong closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his expression was cold. He glanced at his assistant. The assistant stepped forward and took out a few documents from his briefcase. Then, he placed them in front of Fong Wanting. Fong Wanting lowered her head to take a look. The words divorce agreement were added on the front page. Her expression changed immediately. Old Fu Yu. She was dealt a huge blow. Her body was on the verge of collapsing. You really want to divorce me? Since Fu Zonghong had already made his decision, he did not hesitate anymore. He said coldly, the reason why I chose you in the beginning was because I wanted you to take good care of Yunrua. I was wrong. You treat your own daughter well, but that does not mean that you will treat other people's daughters well. Since you can't do it, then there is no need for this marriage to continue. Fu Zonghong's heart was throbbing painfully. Even if he had already made his decision, even if his initial intentions were not pure, how could he not feel anything after being together for so many years? Before we got married, I already said that everything in the Fu family belongs to Yunrua. But seeing that you have been devoted to me for so many years, I will give you a house and a sum of money. It will be enough for you to live the rest of your life without worrying about food or clothing. As for Shuerua, when she is released, I will send her abroad. It will be considered as completing our relationship as father and daughter. Are you blaming me? Fong Wanting looked at Fu Zonghong with tears in her eyes. It has been so many years. Am I not worthy of your trust? Stepmother, I have been trying my best to make Yunrua accept me, but she has been unwilling to accept me. I have tried my best. Even if this is the case, is it still my fault? Fu Zonghong's tone was complicated. It is my fault. He should have stood his ground back then. If he did not remarry, nothing would have happened. Then, the situation would not have turned out like this, where the father and daughter were like enemies. Fong Wanting suddenly tightened her grip on the document. She suppressed her anger for a long time before she calmed down. Tears fell from the corners of her eyes. Must it be like this? Fong Wanting's eyes were blank and at a loss. I've thought about it a lot, old Fu. I thought that after we grew old, you'd be able to put down the heavy burden of your career and have more time to accompany me. I've been waiting for that day to come, but I never thought that we'd reach the stage of divorce. Fong Wanting's voice was calm, but her tears were heavy. Old Fu, what should I do in the future? If Fong Wanting had thrown a tantrum and made a fuss about not signing the document, Fu Zonghong would not have been so soft-hearted. But she was so calm and asked him in a weak and helpless voice what she should do. Fu Zonghong did not feel good about it either. He almost wanted to change his mind and say that he would not divorce, but when he thought of Fu Yun and Wenwan, he hardened his heart. Think about it carefully. Give me a reply in 3 days. Fu Zonghong stood up and left with his assistant. Fong Wanting sat on the sofa. Her back view was weak and lonely. The other helpers did not dare to go forward. They heard that Mr. and Mrs. Fu were going to divorce and felt that it was a pity. But they were just employees and could not say anything. Fong Wanting lowered her head. She looked at the document and her eyes were dark and unreadable. Fu Yun naturally did not know that because of her and her son, Fu Zonghong was preparing to divorce his wife of many years. She was now faced with a difficult problem. Because of Cu and Wenwen's injuries, their popularity on the internet did not decrease. Even if Cu tried to suppress the popularity, it did not have much effect. And after the tireless netizens, the hospital where they were staying was leaked. Now, the hospital was surrounded by fans and reporters. There were even people who pretended to be patients and tried to sneak in. They could not stay in the hospital any longer. And Fu Yun's neighborhood was no secret, so they could not go back. In the end, Siyu suggested that they go to another house to recuperate. His house was very confidential. Besides Yuan Xian, no one else knew about it. Fu Yun was a little hesitant. She and Wan were going to stay at Siyu's house? It felt strange, but it had been so many days and the hospital had not found a suitable nurse. If Siyu was at home, wouldn't it be even more inconvenient to find someone to help? But they could not stay in the hospital any longer. No matter how strict their security was, there would be a day when they would not be able to guard against the omnipresent reporters. But Fu Yun was still very concerned about Siyu's injuries. Could he go home to recuperate? Fu Yun thought about it and decided to ask the doctor first. The doctor's reply was that if he was careful, it would not be a problem to recuperate at home. His injuries were recovering very well. He would be able to fully recover after recuperating for a year or so. Moreover, Dr. Xiao Meng would often check on Siyu, so there was no need to worry at all. In the end, Fu Yun agreed. Uncle Mei and Aunt Mei had stayed in the hospital for a few days and had already understood Siyu and Wenwen's injuries. They felt that it would be inconvenient for them to move to Siyu's house with Fu Yun and the others, so they wanted to leave. When Fu Yun heard this, she was instantly stunned. Uncle Mei, Aunt Mei, you're leaving so soon? Aunt Mei could not bear to leave so soon. She had not kissed enough, so how could she bear to not see Wenwen and Yun Rua so soon? But the two of them could not help much by staying here. They even had to trouble Rua to entertain them. There are a lot of things to do at home, but you don't have to be in such a hurry. The aunties next door will help, right? Fu Yun grabbed Aunt Mei's hand, afraid that she would leave immediately. Wenwen also went forward and hugged Aunt Mei. Her voice was soft and carried a strong sense of reluctance. She looked up with tears in her eyes. Grandma Mei, I can't bear to part with you. Chapter 115. Aunt Mei's heart softened as she was hugged by the little girl. She hugged Wenwen and called her sweetheart a few times. However, not only could they not help, but they also needed Fu Yunrua to take care of them. How could they want to continue staying here? Moreover, they were indeed worried about their family. There were a lot of things to do at home. Wenwen acted coquettishly for a while. In the end, it was Fu Yunrua who remembered and quickly said, Uncle Mei, Aunt Mei, don't you want to watch Wenwen's first movie? Are we going to the cinema now? Aunt Mei asked quickly. They often contacted Fu Yunrua and knew that Wenwen had filmed a big movie. They even wanted to go to the county city to watch it. There were no cinemas in the town, only in the county city. Fu Yunrua thought about the time and nodded. Yes, it's about to be released. She had always remembered the time. Wenwen immediately looked over with sparkling eyes. Mom, it's about to be released. He only remembered the time of the screening, but he did not know what day it was today. Fu Yunrua said, It's the day after tomorrow. Siyu said, Then let's go watch it together. Uncle Mei, Aunt Mei, don't you want to watch a movie with Wenwen and Yunrua? Uncle Mei and Aunt Mei were tempted. They looked at each other, and then Aunt Mei said, Then let's stay for a few more days. Fu Yunrua was overjoyed. Thus, they packed up the things they needed in the ward and left quietly, avoiding the crowd at the entrance of the hospital. Siyu's other house was in a group of villas surrounded by mountains in the center of the capital. In this capital where every inch of land was expensive and the environment was so green, there was a distance between the villas. From the moment they entered the community, there was tight security. This group of villas was famous in the capital for being rich and expensive. Even if you had money, you might not be able to buy it. The three cars drove up the mountain road and reached the top of the mountain in about 20 minutes. Then, they entered a villa area. After Fu Yunrua got out of the car, She carefully helped Siyu out. It was inconvenient for him to walk with his arm in a sling, but walking was not a problem. After Wenwen got off the car, he pinched Fu Yunrua's skirt with his chubby little hands and looked around. He had only heard of this legendary villa and had never been here before. The group of them entered the largest villa. Without Siyu saying anything, Yuan Xian had already assigned them rooms and instructed the bodyguards in black to move their luggage into the rooms. Fuyan only found out later that the two villas nearby also belonged to Siyu. Usually, the bodyguards and servants lived in those two villas. This main villa belonged to the owner. Fu Yunrua's room was next to Siyu's, but Wenwen's room was further away, giving Wenwen a separate floor. Uncle Mei and Aunt Mei were in the guest room next to Wenwen's. Uncle Mei and Aunt Mei were very satisfied with this arrangement. Fu Yunrua thought that Siyu might need to be taken care of, so she had no objections. After the arrangements were made, Fu Yunrua recorded a video for Siyu and Wenwen. First, she thanked them for their concern. Then, she informed the fans and media that they had gone home to recuperate and were no longer in the hospital. She hoped that they would disperse and not disturb the doctors and patients in the hospital. Siyu also released another statement, telling the fans to calm down and not to cause trouble for others. He was fine. When the fans saw that Siyu and Wenwen had gone home to recuperate, it meant that they were fine. Although they had not seen them with their own eyes, they were relieved. Some reporters were unwilling to give up. They went to the entrance of Fu Yunrua's neighborhood to block them. However, they were not in the neighborhood at all, so their plans were foiled. Besides paying attention to the progress of the case, the fans' attention had shifted to the upcoming sci-fi movie starring Siyu. Even if they did not have high hopes for the domestic movie, the lead role was Siyu. Furthermore, it was Wenwen's first screen appearance. Even if the movie was a flop, they would watch it again and again. Therefore, when the online movie theater released the pre-sale of the movie, all the available tickets were booked in less than 10 minutes. Those who were a step behind complained endlessly on the internet. Why were these people so fast? Those who managed to buy tickets were showing off on the forum, provoking a group of people to attack them. Then, they left comments on the movie theater's official website, requesting to increase the shooting rate. The movie theater was not optimistic about the sci-fi movie, even if the premiere reviews were positive. This was because there had been sci-fi movies in the past where the premiere reviews were one-sided. The movie theater had increased the shooting rate because of this, but when it was actually released, it was a flop. Therefore, on account of Siyu, coupled with the fact that the main lead and important supporting roles in the movie had been constantly trending for many days, which had a great impact on the movie's publicity, the cinema finally relented and increased the shooting rate to 30%. However, not long after, all the tickets for the movie's screening time were booked in the past 3 days, and a large group of people complained about not being able to buy tickets on the official website. The movie theater hurriedly called for an emergency meeting to reduce the number of screenings for some movies that were not watched by many people and increase the shooting rate of the sci-fi movie to 50%. Under the anticipation of many people, the day of the movie screening soon arrived. Yuan Xian and the others had already booked a VIP box in the nearest movie theater. Before leaving, Fu Yunrua looked at Siyu and asked worriedly, "Can you really do it? Why don't I bring Uncle Mei and Aunt Mei?" Fu Yunrua looked at the cast that had not been removed. This was very inconvenient. Could he really do it? Siyu said, "It's okay. I can do it." He did not want to miss out on watching a movie with Wenwen and Ruarua. Under Siyu's insistence, Fu Yunrua still brought Siyu along, but he also brought a lot of bodyguards with him. He thought that if he was recognized, there would be people to help him. However, since Siyu was going out, he naturally made full preparations. They entered the VIP box all the way and did not meet any outsiders on the way. Fu Yunrua's phone kept ringing and messages kept coming in. Those who came to watch the movie today did not know that they were a group of people. Many of their friends also brought their families to support them. Some of them who had booked their own tickets were fine, but those who did not came to ask Fu Yunrua if there were any internal tickets or channels to buy tickets. Fu Yunrua asked Yuan Xian, and after getting the movie tickets, he entrusted this matter to Yuan Xian. At such an important moment, Fu Yunrua naturally brought Uncle Gua, Tian Tian, and the others along. They could not sit in one box, but fortunately, they booked 2 boxes. After Fu Yunrua helped Siyu sit down, he started to prepare other things. When one was a little excited and nervous, she sat on the sofa and twisted from time to time as if there were needles under her butt. The others were eating fruits absent-mindedly. Uncle May and Aunt May looked at the big black screen in front of them and kept asking, "It hasn't started yet? When is it starting?" Fu Yunrua said, "It'll start soon. It starts at 7:10 p.m. It was only 6:55 p.m., and it was almost time for the screening. Uncle Gua came very often, but they did not live together, so it was inconvenient for him to go back and forth. Moreover, he needed to take care of the flower garden, so Fu Yunrua was worried about Uncle Gua at this moment, afraid that he would be tired out during this period of time. As they chatted and waited, at 7:07 p.m., the big screen lit up and started to play the advertisement. Fu Yunrua was also attracted. She sat beside Wen and started to stare at the screen. Soon, the movie started. Everyone was watching the movie attentively. At the same time, the other cinemas were also watching it at the same time. Some of the audience members chatted with their companions before the movie started. They held a big bucket of popcorn in their hands and a cup of Coke beside them. Another companion was holding melon seeds in his hand. "If it weren't for Brother Yu, I wouldn't have come to watch this sci-fi movie. I hope the special effects are worth 80 cents. You're doing it for Brother Yu, but I'm not. I'm doing it for my child. Even if it hurts my eyes, I can watch it again." There were similar conversations in other places. They all bought a lot of snacks and drinks, thinking that if it was too boring, they would insist on sitting until the end. At this time, snacks and drinks would be very useful. However, less than 2 minutes after the movie started, some of the audience who were originally indifferent were quickly attracted by the plot. They only focused on watching the movie, and their hearts changed with the emotions of the characters in the movie. Chapter 116. When the movie ended and the audience walked out of the theater, they still had buckets full of popcorn in their hands. Cola drinks, melon seeds, and other snacks were almost untouched. After a moment of silence, someone suddenly said excitedly, "I want to watch it a second time. It's too good. I want to watch it a third or fourth time." "Me too. Bring me along." The audience did not say anything about the plot, but most of them did not want to leave after coming out. They lowered their heads and used their phones to book tickets again. It was obvious that they were very satisfied with the movie. The theater was basically full for the past 3 days, so they could only book tickets later. After booking tickets for the second and third time, they were still not satisfied. One by one, they expressed their thoughts on their social media and consciously want to recommend it. Such a good sci-fi movie, they must not miss it. Even though Fu Yun had already watched it once, she could not help but be immersed in it again. It was like reading a book. Every time she read the same book, she would have a different reaction. Fu Yun watched the movie. The first time, her attention was mainly on the special effects and the actors themselves. This time, she focused more on analyzing the background of each character. When the screen reached the end and the movie ended, Fu Yun's agitated mood had not calmed down. The others were the same. Uncle May and Aunt May were speechless. They did not know how to say anything nice and did not know how to praise it. They only kept saying, "The acting was so good. So good." Siyu did not have much of an opinion, but she looked very happy and relaxed. Meanwhile, when Wen's face turned red from the flattery of his grandparents, he was extremely happy, even happier than when he won his first Best Actor award. After when Wen was happy, he felt uneasy. He saw the reactions of others after watching the movie. These people were all insiders. They looked at him with an extremely thick filter. He could not tell if it was really good. Perhaps the parents only said that it was good because of him? One had to know that in his previous life, this movie was one of the bad movies that was often pulled out to be criticized. Although the special effects of the movie were more sophisticated, the actors involved had changed a lot, and the script had been revised. It was a little different from his previous life, and the characters were more well-rounded, however, when Wen's worries were superfluous. Regardless of whether her friends and relatives had filters, this sci-fi film was a hit, and it was a big hit. The trending searches for CU and Wen, which had just dropped, resurfaced, along with the name of the movie. Perhaps it was because the audience had low expectations for sci-fi movies, so when they saw this high-quality movie, they were even more surprised. The film's special effects were produced by a foreign team. Although it was a foreign team, most of the team members were Chinese. It could be said that it was a sci-fi film made by all Chinese. The special effects were very obvious. There was no awkwardness in the entire process, and the plot was flawless. It had both the Chinese feelings and the quality of a Hollywood blockbuster. On the day it was released, it exploded. Yuan Xine got busy again. His head and tail were nowhere to be seen. Wenwen's second Xinxia movie also gained some popularity. Now that Siyu and Wanwan had met with an accident on set, the crew was afraid of being noticed by the fans, so they kept a low profile. However, Siyu had invested in this drama, and even if the crew had made mistakes, they would not vent their anger on the crew. That would be going against their own wallets. Hence, the crew continued to keep a low profile as usual. Wenwen's scenes had already been filmed, and the scene that caused his injury had also been filmed. Wenwen also felt that it would be a great loss if the movie that he had worked so hard to film and was injured because of it could not be broadcasted in the end. Now that Wenwen and Siyu were trending because of the movie's release, the crew also wanted to ride on the popularity of the movie. When the movie theater saw that the movie had made a name for itself, they held a meeting overnight and made a prompt decision to increase the number of showtimes to 80%. Every day after that, the management smiled happily at the packed theaters. The director of the movie was also beaming with joy every day. He even personally organized a celebratory banquet. However, it was not convenient for Siyu and Wenwen to attend the banquet, so it was a pity that the celebratory banquet was held. However, even though Siyu and Wenwen did not attend the celebratory banquet, they had also organized a banquet among their friends and relatives. They used the celebratory banquet as an excuse to invite their relatives and friends over for a meal. Coincidentally, their relatives and friends had always wanted to visit Wenwen and Siyu after finding out that they were injured. However, they refused to visit because they wanted to recuperate in peace. Now, they wanted to take this opportunity to meet them so that they could rest assured. The popularity of the movie did not decrease by the day. Later on, the director was contacted by overseas countries, hoping to bring this sci-fi movie to their country. Not only other countries in Asia, but even Western countries also wanted to bring it in. Now, the movie was popular both domestically and overseas. While Siyu and Wenwen were trending online, they kept a low profile and stayed in the villa to recuperate. After nearly a month of recuperation, the doctor announced that there was no problem with his body after a checkup. Siyu was also in the prime of his life, so his body recovered quickly. After more than a month, he removed his cast and was undergoing recovery training. However, he still could not make any big movements. Fu Yunruo was finally relieved. After more than a month of buffer, Fu Yunruo was no longer alarmed and worried about personal gains and losses. However, he still kept a close eye on Wenwen. After Uncle May and Aunt May finished watching the movie, they returned to their hometown a week later. Even though Fu Yunruo and Wenwen Ruo repeatedly urged them to stay, they still insisted on going back. After all, they had a lot of things to do at home. Fu Yunruo could only send them off personally. While they were having a peaceful time, Feng Shuiruo's case was progressing step by step. Ever since Fu Zonghong proposed a divorce that day and asked her to consider it, Feng Shui left the house not long after. Perhaps she was worried that Fu Zonghong would come back one day and insist on her signature. She was on tenterhooks every day, afraid that Fu Zonghong would suddenly come looking for her. However, she did not know if Fu Zonghong had softened or if it was for other reasons, but he did not come looking for her. She heaved a sigh of relief, but at the same time, she was worried. No matter what, as long as she did not sign the papers, she was still Madame Fu, and others had to give her some face. For the time being, she could not care less about Feng Shuiruo, who was still in the detention center. Her marriage, which she had painstakingly managed for many years, was ruined by her stupid daughter. She could not wait to stuff her daughter back into her stomach. Now, she was only thinking about how to save her marriage. As for Shuiruo, there was still the Chang family's son. If even he could not get Shuiruo out, then there was nothing she could do. Feng Shui wanted to think about how to save her marriage, but suddenly, she received a call from an unknown number. After she picked up the call, she heard a hoarse middle-aged man's voice. "Wamping, Where are you? Let's meet up? Feng Shui wanted to recognize this voice. She frowned and said coldly, "Didn't I tell you not to contact me again? Such a big thing has happened to our daughter, but you didn't tell me. I could only look for you. I'm in the capital now. Why do you have to be so fake? If you really cared about our daughter, why did you wait until now to look for me? There's no need to meet up. Just tell me, what do you want?" Feng Shui wanted to believe that her ex-husband, who had not contacted her for many years, called her out of concern for their daughter. It had been a month since Shui Rua's accident, and he had checked the news online, so he had already known about it. "Look at what you're saying. I didn't look for you all this time because you didn't let me. She's my daughter too. How can I not care?" "Shut up. Shui Rua has nothing to do with you," Feng Shui Rua said angrily. "No matter how much you deny it, you can't change the fact that she's my daughter." The person on the other end of the phone was Feng Shui Rua's biological father, who was also Feng Shui Rua's ex-husband. If he had done anything wrong to Feng Shui Rua and her mother, he really had not done anything wrong. However, Feng Shui Rua's father was quite handsome, and he was considered a wealthy man in Feng Shui's hometown. Otherwise, Feng Shui Rua would not have married him in the first place. However, after marrying him, she realized that Feng Shui Rua's father was lazy and not motivated at all. The family's gold and silver had also been depleted. This was something that the proud and arrogant Feng Shui, who wanted to live a good life, could not tolerate. After seeing the prosperity of the big city, she decided to stay there. At that time, she was working at the Fu Corporation. She heard that Chairman Fu had lost his wife and was deeply in love with Mrs. Fu, so he was unwilling to remarry. However, Feng Shui heard that his ex-wife had left a young daughter who was crying piteously for food. He even said that he would focus on raising his daughter and leave the Fu Corporation to her in the future. Feng Shui felt that even if this man could hold on for 1 or 2 years without remarrying, he would definitely remarry in the future. Based on how much he loved his daughter, it was very likely that he would not find someone of the same social status. In that case, she still had a chance. For this slim chance, she put all her eggs in one basket. She was determined to divorce her ex-husband and insisted on wanting their daughter. Other than that, she did not want anything else. At that time, Feng Shui Rua's one-sided indifference left the couple with no feelings for each other. Therefore, under Feng Shui Rua's insistence, the two of them divorced peacefully. After that, Feng Shui Rua carefully planned and spent 2 years to finally become Mrs. Fu. When Feng Shui Rua's father found out that his ex-wife had married into a rich family and had a successful career, he came looking for her. However, Feng Shui Rua's father was inexplicably threatened and did not dare to step into the capital again. It was only when he saw that Feng Shui Rua had become a superstar that he kept an eye on her. When he found out that she was filming overseas, he secretly went looking for Feng Shui Rua and tried to find a way to see her. Perhaps Feng Shui Rua cared about family, or perhaps she was afraid that if she ignored him, he would expose everything to the media. In the end, she promised to give him a sum of money every month as long as he never stepped into the capital again and never appeared in front of her and her daughter again. Feng Shui Rua also mentioned it to Feng Wanting after the incident. She felt that since he was Feng Shui Rua's biological father, it was better to spend money to reduce trouble. After the divorce, Feng Shui Rua's father quickly got married and had a son. Naturally, he did not have much feelings for his daughter, Feng Shui Rua. Feng Wanting was displeased. Weren't private rooms prohibited in this cafe? Why didn't they knock on the door? However, when she saw who it was, Feng Wanting's expression changed. She stood up abruptly and said, "Old Fu? What are you doing here?" Feng Wanting looked flustered. She quickly walked out and said, "Old Fu, let me explain." Fu Zonghong looked at Feng Wanting. His eyes were full of disappointment. He hoped that all of this wasn't true and that Feng Wanting was implicated by Shui Rua. However, he couldn't help but admit that perhaps this was her true colors. From the beginning to the end, he had never seen through the person who slept beside him. She could even casually talk about murdering someone and making someone else take the blame for her. He shuddered in fear. If Yun Rua and Wenwen were just ordinary people and not famous, Would she really want to get rid of his daughter and grandchild? Is the recording done? Fu Zonghong asked his personal assistant beside him. The personal assistant went forward and took out a black device the size of a pinky from a hidden place under the table. Then, he replied, "It's done. Chairman Fu." Recording? Fang Wanting's face turned pale. She grabbed Fu Zonghong's arm and said, "Old Fu, listen to me. It's not what you think." Fang Ji naturally recognized that the person was Fang Wanting's husband. He looked at Fu Zonghong, who had a stern expression and a strong aura. Then, he looked at the tall and strong bodyguard at the door. He shrank his neck and said timidly, "It's not my fault. This was all her idea." After speaking, Fang Ji nimbly ran out of the room. The bodyguard at the door saw that the owner of the house didn't give any instructions and stood there motionlessly. Fang Ji shrank his neck and ran out of the door. He ran very far until he couldn't see the cafe anymore. Then, he shivered. He had been caught red-handed. There was nothing he could do. He would be lucky if they didn't take revenge on him. Fang Ji immediately rushed to the bus station and took the nearest train back to his hometown. It was not safe to stay in the unfamiliar capital. It was better to go back to his hometown. As for Shui Ruo, he had no choice. It wasn't that he didn't want to help, but that he couldn't. He thought that she would understand. Fu Zonghong was indifferent. He allowed Fang Wanting to explain with tears in her eyes. In the face of the truth, any explanation was futile. Fu Zonghong looked at his assistant and motioned for him to take out the documents. Then, he said to Fang Wanting, "Sign it." "Old Fu, we have been friends for so many years. How can you be so cruel?" Fang Wanting lowered her head and looked at the divorce agreement in front of her. Fu Zonghong said calmly, "Sign it before I go back on my word." Fang Wanting's lips trembled. She understood what he meant. She knew that she was at a disadvantage. If he insisted on a divorce, she had no say in it. He could even refuse to give her anything. The only thing she could do now was to sign the agreement. Otherwise, she wouldn't even have a house and relocation expenses. Fang Wanting picked up the fountain pen and signed the agreement with trembling hands. Fu Zonghong said, "You have to take responsibility for your mistakes. If you can't even do this, then don't come looking for me again." Fang Wanting's face turned ashen. Fu Zonghong walked out of the private room. After taking a few steps, his straight back suddenly bent down. His face turned pale. He had also done something wrong. If he apologized, would Yun Ruo forgive him? Fu Zonghong's assistant supported him and asked with concern, "Chairman Fu, how are you? Do you want to go to the hospital?" Fu Zonghong had been hospitalized a while ago and had been discharged before he had recovered. Furthermore, he had been working hard. His assistant was very worried. Fu Zonghong calmed down and waved his hand. "I'm fine. Don't make a fuss." Fu Zonghong got into the car. "Yun Ruo." He paused for a moment and then said, "Get someone to monitor the progress of the case. Don't let anyone interfere. Let the verdict be as it should be." The only person who was still unwilling to give up was the young man from the Chang family. Fu Zonghong's assistant understood what he meant and quickly agreed. Perhaps Yun Ruo didn't need to be late to be fair. After failing to get Fang Shui out of the case several times, Chang Zhuyu also thought of finding the person involved. As long as Fu Yun stopped pursuing the case against Fang Shui and wrote a letter of apology, Shui'er would definitely be fine. However, even though he knew where Fu Yun lived, he couldn't enter. He was stopped before he could even meet her. Chang Zhuyu used his family's connections and finally persuaded a relative who also lived in the villa area. He gave up a lot of benefits and finally got the relative to introduce him to Fu Yun. As long as he met Fu Yun, he would definitely be able to get Shui'er out. Chang Zhuyu was about to leave the house in a hurry when he heard a shout behind him. "Stop right there." Chang Zhuyu turned around and saw Father Chang glaring at him with furrowed brows. "Father? Look at what you've been doing all this time. You didn't even go to the company. Instead, you jumped up and down for that woman. You're a joke. Let me tell you, don't interfere in this matter in the future. The Chang family will never let someone with a criminal record be the madam of the Chang family." Chang Zhuyu said unhappily, "Shui'er was wronged. Regardless of whether she was wronged or not, she has been in jail. Have you ever seen any madam of the Chang family enter the detention center? Do you want the Chang family to become a joke in the industry?" Anyway, listen to me. Break off the engagement with Feng Shui immediately. Your mother has been contacting her old friends recently. She'll find someone of equal social status. Chang Zhuyu frowned and said disappointedly, at the beginning of last year, you were so satisfied with Shuer that you couldn't wait to marry her. It hasn't been long and you've changed. His parents were actually such people. Back then, they kept calling her Shueruo and even said that they treated her like their own daughter. Now that Shuer was in trouble, they hit her when she was down. Shuer was so pitiful. The Fu family didn't care about her, and her fans left her one by one. Even his parents were like that. Shuer only had him now. Thinking of this, Chang Zhuyu felt that he had a heavy responsibility. He looked coldly at Father Chang and announced, I only have one wife, and that is Feng Shui. No one can change that. Then, he turned and strode away with his head held high. You. Father Chang was so angry that he clutched his chest. You unfilial son. Of course, Fu Yun didn't know that Fu Zonghong and Feng Wanning had really divorced. Chang Zhuyu was trying his best to see her. They stayed in the villa and were protected by layers of bodyguards. No one could get close to Fu Yun Ruo. When regained her lively personality. See, you got someone to find a children's version of a car from somewhere. It looked super cool and flashy. Boys, no matter their age, loved cars. Wenwen loved the car so much that she couldn't bear to part with it. Every day, she would drive the car around the yard a few times. Fu Yun Ruo stood by the side and watched. Siyu also stood by the side and looked relaxed. Ruo, do you want to go to the island to play? Won't you get tired of staying at home all day and not going anywhere? Although the family of three lived happily together, Siyu was still worried that Fu Yun Ruo and Wenwen would get tired of staying at home all day. Fu Yun Ruo hesitated for a moment. Wenwen is going to start school soon. Although the little boy was acting spoiled and didn't want to go to school, Fu Yun Ruo still wanted him to go to school normally. Siyu said, don't worry about his studies. There will be teachers to guide him. Siyu thought for a while and said, my parents want to meet you. He could have kept it from her and lied to her first, but in the end, he chose to be honest and let Fu Yun Ruo make the decision. Fu Yun Ruo's face stiffened. Meet what? Siyu's parents? You don't have to be nervous. They already know about you and like you very much. They are especially looking forward to meeting you. Siyu didn't tell them about Fu Yun Ruo and Wenwen because he was worried that they would run over excitedly when they found out that they suddenly had such a big grandson and such a beautiful daughter-in-law. It wasn't the right time to meet them. However, the news of his injury was all over the place. Siyu even used his family's connections, so naturally, he couldn't hide it from them. When they asked, Siyu told them the truth. As expected, they couldn't wait to come over, but Siyu stopped them. Based on his understanding of them, they were almost at the limit of their tolerance. Fu Yun Ruo had taken care of him carefully for more than a month. At least Fu Yun Ruo didn't reject his flirtatious behavior and would occasionally blush in front of him. The two of them only lacked a layer of paper. He felt that it wasn't too rushed to meet the parents now. After all, they already had a child. She wanted to meet the parents. Fu Yun Ruo was nervous and even a little scared. Siyu looked at her resentfully. We are already in such a relationship. Don't tell me you still don't want to give me a status? Fu Yun Ruo's gaze drifted. Don't talk nonsense. What relationship do we have? Siyu couldn't believe it. You saw me naked and touched me, yet you don't want to take responsibility for me? Siyu looked at Fu Yun Ruo with eyes full of accusation, as if he was looking at a peerless scumbag. Fu Yun Ruo was weak. I was just fulfilling my duty as a nurse. She had only helped him wipe his body a few times. If it weren't for the fact that they couldn't find a suitable nurse, didn't want the maids to help, and despised the bodyguards for being too rough, would she have helped him wipe his body? Wasn't she doing this for the sake of Wenwen's savior? Otherwise, she definitely wouldn't have cared about him. I knew it. You don't want to take responsibility for me. Siyu clasped his heart. Fu Yun Ruo. She actually didn't feel that it hurt her eyes at all. She even wanted to comfort him. He was indeed the king of acting. Just as Fu Yun Ruo was in a dilemma, when Wen's car drove back and stopped beside Fu Yun Ruo. Then, she stuck her head out of the car roof and looked over with her big black eyes. What are you talking about? Whether it was Fu Yunruo or Siyu, they wanted to see the verdict with their own eyes. However, in Siyu's heart, this wasn't the end, but the beginning. He wouldn't let it go just like that. Just the punishment of the law wasn't enough. When it was time for the court session, almost everyone's eyes were on the court. The fans and the media were eager to know the verdict as soon as possible. Fu Yunruo and Siyu were both there. Chang Zhuyu looked at Fu Yunruo with bloodshot eyes. He had never expected that Siyu would protect them so well. Even though he had asked that person to introduce them, Siyu still didn't give that person any face. That person actually wasn't angry, which meant that there was nothing he could do. At this point, if he didn't know that Siyu's identity wasn't as simple as it seemed on the surface, he would really be stupid. No wonder he couldn't touch Siyu all these years. He had thought that it was because Apple Entertainment was protecting him regardless of the consequences. After all, Apple Entertainment was a big shot in the entertainment industry. If they really wanted to protect someone, they would be able to do so. Now that he thought about it, other than his status in the entertainment industry, Apple Entertainment was protecting him regardless of the consequences. If it weren't for his strong background, Apple Entertainment wouldn't have protected him so tightly, and he wouldn't have been so arrogant. But who exactly was he? Why hadn't he heard of such a person before? Could he be overseas? No, he had heard of the famous Asian families overseas. Even if he hadn't seen them before, there were at least some famous people in their families. At least, he knew the representatives of each family. However, it was true that many of the people in these families were well protected. Basically, no one knew about them. Surnamed C. Which family was he from? C? He suddenly thought of the most unlikely family. Could it be that family? Chapter 119. Chang Zhuyu's expression changed. Fu Yunruo noticed that Chang Zhuyu wasn't the only one who came. Fang Wanning and Fu Zonghong were also here. She had been living quite comfortably during this period of time, except for worrying about the adult and the child. Fu Yunruo didn't want to pay attention to Chang Zhuyu at first, but his eyes were staring at her, and his presence was very noticeable. It was difficult to ignore him. Fu Yunruo looked over, but Chang Zhuyu was staring at her in a daze. Siyu noticed Fu Yunruo's gaze and blocked it with his body. When he saw Fu Yunruo looking over, he said seriously, "Look at me, I'm more handsome." Fu Yunruo was speechless. She was silent for a while, then burst out laughing. Then Fu Yunruo looked away and turned to Fang Shuiruo. After not seeing her for a while, Fang Shuiruo, who had been locked up in the detention center for a month, looked a lot more haggard and weak. Perhaps it was because no matter who tried, they couldn't get Fang Shuiruo out, so there was a hint of melancholy between her eyebrows. To be honest, Fu Yunruo was very surprised. She thought that she wouldn't be able to get justice. After all, this was the female lead of the original novel, and she had a powerful family like the Chang family to protect her. She thought that Fang Shuiruo would be released soon. Perhaps Siyu saw her worry and said that he would leave this matter to him. After that, he didn't let her worry about it. From time to time, she would hear about the progress from Yuan Ge. Thinking of this, Fu Yunruo couldn't help but look at Siyu a few more times. In the past, she thought that the male and female leads were God's illegitimate children. Now, it seemed that Siyu was the biological son. No wonder whether it was the original novel or the world after she came over. Chang Zhuyu and Fang Shuiruo were not in Siyu's hands. Tao Dalong was better. As long as God was clear, there was a difference between a biological son and an illegitimate child. So, she was riding on the coattails of her biological son? Fang Shui was a little excited when he saw Fu Yun. She begged and pleaded, wanting to see Fu Yunruo. She wanted to apologize to Fu Yunruo. She wanted her to forgive her and give up pursuing her responsibility, but she never responded. The last time her mother came to visit her, she told her a piece of shocking news. Her mother and uncle had divorced. If Fang Shui felt that the sky had collapsed and her uncle divorced her mother, it meant that not only would he not care about her anymore, he would also blame her mother. She knew how much effort her mother had put in to keep her position as Mrs. Fu. Moreover, when she saw how her mother controlled her uncle step by step and made him put all his attention on her, leaving only her mother by her side, she felt very proud of herself. She subconsciously imitated her mother and figured out what Chang Zhuyu, who was the most outstanding person in the circle with the best family background, liked and liked. Then, step by step, she drew him closer to her. Since uncle would escape from mother's control, then what about Chang Zhuyu? Feng Shui was flustered. She only had him now. If she lost him, she would really be done for. Feng Shui looked at Chang Zhuyu's eyes. She wanted to say something but stopped. She was about to cry and felt very wronged. Chang Zhuyu's heart ached. He wanted to immediately hug Feng Shui and comfort her. Unfortunately, he could only sit in the audience at this moment. Even the slightest movement would be noticed. Soon, the judge announced that the court was in session. Everyone was silent as the process went on. You hired a team of lawyers. Every one of them was the best of the best. They basically led the other team by the nose throughout the entire process. The team of lawyers that Chang Zhuyu had hired with a lot of money could not fight back. It was obvious who was better. Chang Zhuyu's face turned uglier with every passing minute. Feng Shui's face turned ashen as well. At this moment, regardless of whether she pleaded guilty or not, the outcome was already set. Moreover, she could not refute. However, she still could not figure out where the evidence came from. She had clearly destroyed it completely. The person who was on the other side of the internet would not know whether she was a human or a ghost. The IP address would not be traced back to her either. Naturally, Feng Shuiruo didn't know that this piece of evidence was half real and half fake. You had directly pinned Feng Shuiruo as the murderer and then investigated some clues. Based on these clues, they created a flawless piece of evidence. Even Feng Shuiruo didn't dare to say that this piece of evidence was fake because it was exactly the same as the real thing. The trial entered the climax. Then, the judge announced a 30-minute recess to discuss the outcome of the trial. Chang Zhuyu finally found an opportunity to stand in front of Fu Yun. At this moment, he had a favor to ask of her, so he deliberately lowered his attitude. Fu Yun, what do you want in order for you to let Shuer go? However, he was used to being high and mighty, so his tone was unconsciously cold. Feng Wanning also walked over. She looked haggard and looked a lot older. She looked like she had a lot on her mind and was depressed. Yun Ruo, if you hate me, then come at me. Shuer is still so young. I beg you to let her go. I beg you. Feng Wanning pleaded. Just as she was about to kneel down, someone beside her stopped her in time. Yuan Exine said, "You're an old person, kneeling down to a young person. Do you want to shorten her lifespan?" Feng Wanning's face turned pale. Fu Yun looked at them expressionlessly. You should be asking, what do you want in order for you to let me go? She had never taken the initiative to provoke them. She only wanted to live her life well. They were the ones who repeatedly came in front of her to show their existence. They even did things to hurt one. If there was anything wrong with them, they could just come at her. To lay a hand on a child, the word vicious could no longer be used to describe Feng Shui. She was simply heartless. Chang Zhuyu said harshly, Shuer has been locked up in the detention center for so long. Her reputation is also ruined. She has already been abandoned by everyone. Isn't this punishment enough? Why don't we reconcile? Anyway, the child is fine, right? Reconcile? Impossible. Fu Yun sneered. Even if I have to go bankrupt, I will seek justice. Fu Yun did not know how Chang Zhuyu could be so shameless as to say the word reconcile so casually. He even dared to say that the child was fine? Did that mean that all crimes would not be punished as long as the victim was not dead? Fortunately, the child was fine. Otherwise, why would Fu Yun want to use legal means to seek justice for herself? She would drag them to hell even if she had to. You two grew up together. Don't say that. You two grew up together. Don't confuse me with the two of you. After a pause, Fu Yun stabbed back. Moreover, she is not dead. What's wrong with just going to jail to atone for her crimes? Fu Yun could not wait for this scourge to stay in jail until the end of time. However, she also knew that Feng Shui was at most charged with inducing a crime and other charges that were neither light nor heavy. No matter how she was sentenced, it would only be a short jail term and her life would not be in danger. Her one had walked around the gates of hell. Feng Shui said bitterly, Your father has already divorced me. Shuer and I will stay far away from you in the future. Fu Yun did not expect that they had already divorced. She was surprised for a moment, then said indifferently, "Whether you divorce or not has nothing to do with me." She thought that after hearing this news, this body would instinctively express happiness. However, there were no emotions at all. The memories of the original body could no longer affect her. "Shuer has nothing left, but you have everything." Chang Zhuyu gritted his teeth and said reluctantly, "As long as you are willing to let Shuer off, I am willing to marry you." Shuer would definitely only let Fu Yun have a status. His body and heart would still belong to Shuer. Chang Zhuyu's heart ached at the thought of Shuer being wronged. However, this was only a temporary strategy. Once she wrote a letter of understanding and agreed to reconcile, Fu Yun was speechless. "Have you seen a doctor? Was there something wrong with this person's brain? Did he think that he was a mountain of gold and silver that everyone dreamed of? Where did this illusion come from?" She liked him and wanted to marry him no matter what. Siyu did not intend to talk to Chang Zhuyu. However, he was very unhappy when he heard what Chang Zhuyu said. He glared at him coldly and said, "Mr. Chang, watch your words. You have nothing to do with Ruoruo." Chang Zhuyu looked at Siyu, and his heart skipped a beat. When he thought of his possible identity, his expression changed. However, for Shuer's sake, he gritted his teeth and said, "I don't mind you taking care of the child." Fu Yun felt as if there was a fishbone stuck in her throat. She was disgusted. Siyu stood in front of Fu Yun and approached Chang Zhuyu. He sneered and said, "Where did you get the confidence to think that you are better than me?" Not only did he have designs on his future wife and son, he even dared to despise his son. Fu Zonghong had been paying attention to them. When he saw that Fang Shui and Chang Zhuyu were harassing Yun Ruo again, he could no longer hold it in. "Enough. Are you looking down on the Fu family?" Although the Fu family was not as powerful as the Chang family in the past, they were not weak either. They had hurt the heir of the Fu family. Fu Zonghong was already taking into account their past friendship by not taking revenge. Recently, the Chang family had made a mistake in their investment and had suffered greatly. If they really angered him, they could not blame him for not taking into account the friendship between the two families. Old Fu, Fang Shui, looked pitiful. "I only have one daughter," Fu Zonghong said coldly. "I only have one daughter too." Fu Yun glanced at Fu Zonghong. She thought to herself, if the original owner of this body heard this, she would be so happy. Unfortunately, not long after, the judge and jury walked in. No one said anything. Chang Zhuyu and Fang Shui returned to their seats unwillingly. This was the conclusion of the discussion. Fu Yun Ruo sat upright, her eyes staring straight ahead. Siyu reached out and held Fu Yun's hand. He wanted to give her strength. Fu Yun looked at the judge nervously and waited for the verdict to be announced. Soon, the court announced the verdict. Due to the fact that the case had attracted a lot of attention and discussion, and the fact that the victim was a minor, the case was dealt with severely. The main culprit was sentenced to 15 years in prison. As for Fang Shui's actions, although she did not constitute an accomplice, she was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Everything had been settled. All of them deserved it. Fu Yun thought to herself, 3 years. 3 years is not a short time, but time passes very quickly. Fu Yun thought that even if Fang Shui was released, things would have changed. She would not be able to stay in the entertainment industry anymore. Fang Shui was divorced, and there would be no place for her in the Fu family. Chang Zhuyu still loved her deeply, but she did not know if the rest of the Chang family would accept her. For the prideful Fang Shuerua, these consequences were truly painful to the bottom of her heart. It was enough. After the trial ended, the audience started to disperse. Fu Yun and the rest also left quickly. Many media personnel who were waiting outside couldn't help but rush forward to interview Fu Yun and the rest. This court had attracted a lot of attention. Many media personnel used their connections to get a spot in the audience. At this time, whoever released the news first would become famous. They could not bring electronic products into the court, but it did not affect them from getting the first news. Siyu had expected this situation. So many bodyguards rushed forward to stop them. When Fu Yun Ruo saw so many people rushing over, she was shocked. Siyu held Fu Yun's hand and did not let go. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." Fu Yun nodded. She was not afraid of such a scene, but she had never dealt with so many media personnel before and was not used to it. The tall and strong bodyguards separated the crowd. Fu Yun heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they did not squeeze over. What if they hurt Siyu again? His arm was still weak. Miss Fu, do you think that Feng Shui's sentence will be recognized? I heard that Chairman Fu and his wife divorced. Was it because of you? Miss Fu, Mr. Yu. Fu Yun stood still and looked at the reporters. Everyone quickly quieted down and waited for Fu Yun to speak. Fu Yun said seriously, "Thank you for your attention to this case. I have no objections to the court's decision." Fu Yun said some words in a very official manner, but these were her heartfelt words. She chose to answer a few questions and finally said, "Please be orderly. Don't push around. Mr. Yu's injury has not fully recovered." In the end, they quickly left under the escort of the bodyguards. At this time, there were more than 10 hot searches on the internet. Basically, they were all related to this matter. The fans who were eagerly waiting finally got an answer and rushed to spread the news. Feng Shui's account was losing fans every second. The entertainment company that she was in directly announced the termination of her contract and quickly distanced themselves from the Chang family. The businesses that had worked with Feng Shui in the past removed all their previous publicity information from their shelves. Almost instantly, Feng Shui became a nobody in the entertainment industry. In addition to these things, there was another hot search that quickly jumped to the top 3. Siyu and Fu Yun are together. The reason was that a passerby had taken a picture of them holding hands in public in an intimate manner. Has Brother Yu and Yun Yun made an official announcement? But don't you think that Brother Yu is too good to one? It was indeed premeditated. It turns out that he has taken a liking to the child's mother. I've always wanted to say that Brother Yu has bad intentions towards Wan and Yun Yun. So, we've really hit the nail on the head. I've moved the Civil Affairs Bureau here. Please get married on the spot. Thank you. It wasn't that Fu Yun didn't deserve Siyu when she gave birth to a child out of wedlock. However, it had long been drowned in the sea of public opinion and didn't stir up a single wave. If they married a beautiful woman with fair skin and a good temperament, they would wake up laughing even in their dreams if they could get such an adorable child as a gift. Many people were envious and jealous of Siyu. Not only did he marry the goddess of his fans, but he could also openly raise their child. Boo-hoo! They were so envious that they burst into tears. Even most of Siyu's fans had nothing to say. They had already had a hunch, so they weren't surprised. When they thought that Wen's child would be their child in the future, they suddenly became excited. Thus, the little moons confidently climbed the wall and swarmed into Wen's social media account to openly suck on her child. Boo-hoo, how can my child be so cute? My child is too amazing. Her acting skills are amazing. When one had been scrolling through social media on his phone, he knew that as soon as the case ended, it would definitely be trending online. As expected, he soon saw the results. When one thought that everything was over, his life had completely changed. If Feng Shui went to jail for 3 years, that woman would definitely not be born. Could it be that Chang Zhuyu would run to the prison to sleep with Feng Shuerua? Even if he wanted to, the country wouldn't allow it. If he remembered correctly, that woman would be born in the next few years. She wouldn't have a chance to be born. Haha. When one was overjoyed. When he thought about how he wouldn't have to breathe in the same air as that disgusting and annoying woman, he felt that the future would be too beautiful. He hadn't done anything yet, but all his worries were gone. When one was happy when he suddenly saw a trending topic. His smile gradually disappeared. Someone wanted to steal his mother. Even though when one knew what was going on, when he saw the video of them holding hands, when one was still furious and jealous. Would he still be his mother's favorite baby in the future? Chapter 120. When one puffed up his chubby cheeks and continued to watch. Suddenly, he couldn't open it. The server had crashed. He was even angrier. Hence, when Fu Yun and Siyu returned, they were greeted by an angry back view. Even the strands of hair on that chubby little body were saying, "I'm angry, come and coax me." Fu Yun immediately went forward and squatted down to hug Wan. She said softly, "Baby, don't be angry. Mommy loves you the most." Fu Yun thought that when one was angry because she didn't bring him out in the morning. She felt that this was a court after all, and she didn't want one to appear. What if he was traumatized? Hence, they resolutely didn't bring him along in the morning. Fu Yun thought that when one had been angry until now, so she quickly comforted him. That place isn't fun at all. In the future, Mommy will bring you to a very, very fun place. Okay? It had to be said that although Wenwen wasn't angry for this reason, it was a stroke of luck. Wenwen, who was still throwing a tantrum, was coaxed. His angry little face bloomed with joy. Wenwen glanced at Siyu proudly. He was still Mommy's favorite baby. I love Mommy the most too. Sigh. He was already so old. Yet he still had to talk about love all day. It was really too embarrassing. However, Mommy had to coax him. Otherwise, what if he cried? The mother and son were instantly affectionate and spoke together with their heads touching. Mommy is telling you. The bad guys who hurt Wenwen have all been locked up by the police. No one can hurt Wenwen in the future. Wenwen looked up. I'm not afraid. Yes, yes. Wenwen is the bravest. Mommy is also brave. Siyu sat at the side and looked at the mother and son. He smiled and his eyes seemed to overflow with gentleness. Now that the case had been closed, Fu Yun seemed to have put down one of her worries. She felt much more relaxed, and her smile did not have any gloominess. Many relatives and friends who were also concerned about the case also sent their greetings. Fu Yun Ruo responded to them one by one. However, other than that, there were also many people who teased her for hiding it so well. When would she invite them to the wedding banquet? Fu Yun was baffled. What did she mean by attending the wedding banquet? She was still single. Fu Yun opened the platform and instantly saw the trending topic that was already at the top. What was going on? Her? Mr. He Yu? Did they hold hands after they came out? Why didn't she have any impression of it? Fu Yun recalled that the only time she had held hands with Siyu was when they were seated in the audience. Could it be that they had been holding hands for so long that she had gotten used to it and did not realize it? She casually flipped through a few comments under the trending searches and was flustered. Fu Yun Ruo hurriedly contacted Tian Tian and asked her to quickly remove the trending searches. Tian Tian quickly responded and said that the trending topic was exploding and could not be suppressed. Indeed, Siyu had debuted for more than 10 years and had never been involved in any scandals. This was the first time in many years that she had been tied to the opposite sex so openly. There were more and more excited fans. Before Fu Yun Ruo clicked on it, the servers of the two major social media platforms, whether it was the entertainment industry or the live broadcast industry, had already crashed twice. Fu Yun Ruo was able to open it because the great programmer had just rescued the server. However, in less than 3 minutes, it crashed again. The server had crashed more than 3 times in just 2 hours. It was really unique. At this rate, it would probably crash a few more times. This kind of popularity could only be achieved by Siyu. Of course, Fu Yun Ruo also contributed a lot to the popularity. Fu Yun Ruo heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that the web page could no longer be accessed. However, when she thought about the grand occasion when the server was repaired, she could only think of asking Siyu to suppress the popularity. However, in front of the child, Fu Yun Ruo was embarrassed to talk about this topic. Hence, she lowered her head and sent a message to Siyu. I heard that you don't have any scandals with the opposite sex. Is it bad for you to be on the trending searches now? Why don't you ask your team to leave quickly? When Siyu heard the vibration of a WeChat message, he lowered his head to take a look. Then, his slender fingers tapped on the screen and he quickly replied, I don't have any scandals with anyone. Before Fu Yun Ruo could heave a sigh of relief, she saw the next sentence. Except for you. Fu Yun Ruo gasped and looked up at Siyu. Siyu also looked at Fu Yun Ruo with a smile on his face. Besides, this isn't a scandal. As he spoke, he moved his body and leaned over to get closer to her. However, just as he moved at an angle, his chubby little body squeezed in between the two of them, forming an insurmountable obstacle. When one had just been comforted by Fu Yun Ruo, but when he saw the two of them sending messages in front of him, he was very unhappy. What were they saying behind his back? What was it that they couldn't let him hear? Before one could stand on his tiptoes to take a look, he saw Siyu's actions. He immediately squeezed in between the two of them and even pushed Siyu away. He glared at him. Why did he suddenly lean over? Siyu was speechless. He suddenly realized that this little chubby boy was the biggest obstacle in his pursuit of his wife. Could he apply for a refund? It was a pity that he couldn't return this little guy. Siyu clicked his tongue in his heart. Under Wenwen's cross-eyed gaze, he finally cooperated and moved away. Wenwen sat between the two of them with her arms crossed and snorted loudly. Siyu brought up the old topic again. The topic of Wenwen will probably be discussed for a while. Should we prepare to go abroad to avoid the limelight? Siyu had already protected Wenwen heavily, but it was better to be safe than sorry. Feng Shui had been in the entertainment industry for many years. Her fans were the most irrational. Even though many of them had already stopped being her fans, there were still a considerable number of them who continued to clamor that Feng Shui was innocent. Even though she had been sentenced, there were still a number of die-hard fans who cried out for her innocence. Siyu was worried that when Wenwen went to school, those die-hard fans would bypass his layers of protection and hurt Wenwen. Based on the fact that some of her die-hard fans had laid their hands on Wenwen, it was obvious that these people only had the same moral values as Feng Shui. Persimmons were easy to bully. No one dared to seek revenge on him. They would only bully the weak. Furthermore, during the summer break, that sci-fi film was a hit. Wenwen had become the most famous child star with just one role. Yuan Xian wasn't exaggerating at all. Wenwen did indeed have the potential. He didn't even need to specially create a path for him to become the #1 child star. He had become the #1 child star with just one role. It was so smooth that it was unbelievable. When the cinemas saw that the film was a hit, not only did they request to extend the time it was taken off the shelves, but they also increased the number of showtimes to almost 100%. The investors made a lot of money and could wake up smiling in their dreams. Not only that, but this film had already signed many foreign copyrights. It wouldn't be long before it would be shown in cinemas all over the world. Fu Yun and Wenwen had always been under Siyu's protection. Everything in the outside world was isolated from him. Wenwen didn't know much about his current fame and naturally didn't know how popular he was now. He was already an A-lister. Siyu was very proud inside. Indeed, like father, like son. Back then, his film was a hit and he became an A-lister. It was just that he acted as the male lead. Wenwen was only a minor supporting role with the third male lead. He was much more impressive than he was back then. He had surpassed his master. Of course, Siyu wouldn't tell Wenwen these things, lest he became arrogant. Fu Yun was most concerned about Wenwen's safety now. When she heard Siyu say this, she was very nervous. Other than paying attention to the progress of the case, she paid the most attention to Wenwen. She often scrolled through Wenwen's news online, so she could naturally feel Wenwen's rapidly rising popularity. Fu Yun didn't expect Wenwen to become so popular so quickly. She remembered that the person in the original novel had been training for many years before he finally struggled to find a way in the entertainment industry. However, they were two different people now, right? Fu Yun was relieved. A rapid rise in popularity would indeed bring a lot of trouble. Even adults would find it difficult to deal with, let alone children. During the summer vacation, many adults would definitely bring their children to watch movies. The children from the same school would definitely recognize them. On the first day of the movie's release, she had already received many warm greetings from parents. Children didn't know the severity of the situation. If they accidentally hurt Wenwen when they wanted to see Wenwen, whether it was hurting Wenwen or other children, it wouldn't be a small matter. Fu Yun had thought about the consequences of Wenwen going to film, but she didn't expect this day to come so quickly. Would he still have a carefree and happy childhood in the future? Wenwen hugged Fu Yun's arm and said coquettishly, "Mom, I want to be with you." Wenwen didn't say that he didn't want to go to school. He actually thought that school was quite interesting. Although the children were a little childish, they were still obedient. He was quite happy. However, if it didn't affect his studies, he was more than willing to stay with his mother every day. He was still a child now, so it wasn't strange for him to stick to his mother. When he grew up in the future, he wouldn't be able to stick to his mother so unscrupulously. Fu Yun wavered again. When she lowered her head, she saw Wenwen's sparkling big eyes. When she raised her head, she saw Siyu's expectant eyes. Siyu said, "It's really fun. The scenery is very beautiful. If you really mind, I'll discuss it with them. If you're not ready, you don't have to meet them. They'll avoid you." Fuyun looked embarrassed and waved her hands. How could she let the elders avoid her? "Why don't you bring Wenwen along?" "I won't go." Fuyun trusted Siyu and believed that he wouldn't snatch her son away from her. Therefore, it was good for him to bring Wenwen to meet other relatives. Her relatives here could be ignored. It would be good to have more relatives on Siyu's side. When Wenwen heard that they were going to separate, he immediately said, no. He didn't want to leave his mother to play alone. Was that considered playing? It wasn't. Fuyun hesitated, but she thought about it again. Would Siyu's relatives treat Wenwen badly? After all, he didn't have a proper status. When she thought about how Wenwen might be wronged in a place where she couldn't see, she couldn't bear to leave him. Siyu said, "Ruoruo, if you really don't like it, we'll go somewhere else." Siyu sighed. He was still too impatient. Fuyun heaved a sigh of relief and nodded. Without further ado, Siyu immediately arranged the itinerary and booked a flight for tomorrow afternoon. He would take a private jet and head over directly. When Fuyun heard that they were in such a hurry, she hurriedly went to pack her luggage. Siyu said, "You don't have to pack anything. I'll get someone to prepare everything." Only then did Fuyun Ruo give up. When one was instantly overjoyed. He didn't have to go to kindergarten. Chapter 121. The next day, under Wenwen's anticipation, it was finally time to set off. Wenwen could not wait any longer. She paced around the living room excitedly. Fuyun first asked Uncle Gua if they were going on a trip. However, Uncle Gua thought that he had not taken care of his flowers during this period of time. Now that Wenwen and Siyu were fine, he was relieved and naturally focused on his flowers. As for Yuan Xian and Tian, they were even more busy. Wenwen's popularity rose and Siyu's popularity was not small either. Yuan Xian was so busy that his feet did not touch the ground. It was painful but happy. Fuyun also became popular because of Wenwen and Siyu. Tian and the staff in the studio were also very busy. In the end, only Fuyun and the other two went. "Mom, are you done?" Wenwen raised her head from time to time. Although Siyu did not need to bring anything, Fuyun still packed some personal clothes and things that she felt would be useful. She thought that she had only packed a few things, but in the end, it still filled 2 big suitcases. Fuyun originally wanted to reduce the number of suitcases, but she could not bear to take any of them down. She felt that it was necessary. In the end, she decided not to reduce the number of suitcases. Before they set off, Siyu suddenly said to Fuyun, "Chairman Fu wants to meet you. Do you want to meet him?" Fu Zonghong had connections and social circles. If he wanted to find out where Fuyun and the others were staying, he would definitely be able to find out. In the end, he contacted his people and requested to meet him. For people like Chang Zhuyu and Fang Shui, Siyu knew that Fuyun had been impatient to deal with them, so he directly rejected them. However, this Chairman Fu's identity was a little special. Siyu could not make a decision on his own, so he asked Fuyun. This time, they were going abroad for at least half a month before coming back. It might even be longer. Siyu asked Fu Zonghong to wait outside today. If Fuyun Ruo wanted to see him, she could see him directly. If she didn't want to see him, she could just avoid him. No. Fuyun's first reaction was to reject him. However, after she thought about how Fang Shui was caught, Fu Zonghong had not helped her and even wanted to divorce Fang Shui. Fuyun did not know if his decision to divorce had anything to do with her. After all, from what she knew, Fang Shui and her mother had a much more important position in his heart than her. Fuyun hesitated for a moment and changed her mind. "Forget it. Let's meet him." Hence, Siyu brought Fuyun to meet him. Wenwen, who was listening at the side, quickly said, "I want to go too." Fuyun patted his little head and said gently, "Wenwen, can you stay here and help Mommy look after my luggage?" Wenwen looked unhappy. "I'll bring you there. Let Uncle you look after my luggage at home." As Wenwen spoke, she ran forward in small steps and held Fu Yunrua's hand, indicating that she was determined to follow. SSIU. This little brat was becoming less and less adorable. In the end, Fu Yun could not dissuade the little coquettish boy and brought Wenwen along. However, before they went to meet him, Fu Yun asked Wenwen to follow Siyu. The two of them went somewhere else to wait while she went to meet him alone. They met at a pavilion not far from the villa. It had only been a day, but Fu Zonghong seemed to have aged a lot. It was obvious that he was old. There were more wrinkles on his face and more white hair. When Fu Zonghong saw Fu Yun walking over, he opened his mouth but did not know what to say. For the past 20 years, whenever the father and daughter pair saw each other, their anger would naturally rise. Every time they met, they would quarrel until the sky fell and the earth cracked. There were very few times when they were calm. Now that the father and daughter were facing each other, they were in an awkward situation where they had nothing to say. When Fu Zonghong thought about how he had neglected his daughter all these years and caused her to suffer, he felt guilty and blamed himself. He could not understand why he did not ask about his daughter after she went missing for so many years. It was as if he had forgotten about his daughter. Fu Zonghong felt as if he had been bewitched. However, no matter what the reason was, he was the one who had neglected her. Any explanation would be useless. In the end, Fu Yun was the first to break the silence. "Why are you looking for me?" Fu Zonghong was silent. He only looked at Fu Yun and did not say anything. Fu Yun said calmly, "If there is nothing else, I will leave first." Fu Yun turned around and was about to leave. Fu Zonghong quickly called out to her, "Yun Ruo." He opened his mouth and finally said in a low voice, "Ruru, I was wrong in the past. I was wrong. Will you forgive me? Will you still acknowledge me as your father?" Fu Yun stopped in her tracks. If the original owner heard this apology, how would she react? Would she forgive him? Or would her heart have already turned cold and she did not care anymore? Unfortunately, she was not the original owner and had no way of knowing what the original owner was thinking. In the end, she said lightly, "The person who has the right to say whether or not she will forgive you is no longer around." After saying that, Fu Yun Ruo took a step forward and left. Fu Zonghong bent down a little. He was the one who had let her down. Fu Yun walked for a while and saw an adult and a child squatting by the side of the road staring at each other. Her originally heavy heart suddenly became much brighter. The two of them immediately noticed Fu Yun walking over. Wenwen took the lead and ran over to Fu Yun's side. She shouted softly, "Mummy!" Siyu stood up and walked over to her unhurriedly. Fu Yun revealed a smile and bent down to pick up her little darling. Let's go, let's go." Siyu carefully observed Fu Yun. Seeing that her mood was not affected, he felt relieved. Wenwen put one hand around Fu Yun's neck and waved her hand in high spirits. "Let's go." The group of people left in the limousine. When they arrived at the airport, they took a private plane and took off. Fu Yun felt that it was quite strange for her to take a private plane for the first time. This private plane was not the kind that could only seat 2 or 3 people on television. The interior was very spacious and had a low-key luxurious feeling. There was a room for resting. There was a fixed bed and a sofa outside. It looked very comfortable and the feeling of sitting down was amazing. There were also a lot of drinks and pastries. The plane flew steadily and there was not much noise. If they did not see the clouds outside, they would not have thought that they were high up in the sky. Other than the 3 of them and the pilot, there were many bodyguards. However, they were all in the private room at the back and would not come forward without orders. Fu Yun sat for a while and asked Wenwen, who was in high spirits, "Do you want to go to sleep?" Siyu had already told them that it would take about 5 hours to reach their destination. It would be boring to just sit there for such a long time. Wenwen shook her head. "I'm not sleeping." Siyu found a deck of poker cards from somewhere. "Let's play Fight the Landlord?" If Fu Yun was interested, it would be better than just sitting there and eating. However, Fight the Landlord required 3 people. Wenwen was so young. Could she do it? Fu Yun looked over and saw Wenwen's eager face. He quickly responded, "Let's play. Watch him kill everyone." Yes, watch him kill everyone with his mother. He is very good at Fight the Landlord. Haha. Fu Yun was doubtful. "Do you know how to play?" She did not remember teaching Wenwen how to play Fight the Landlord. I know how to play. Wenwen answered loudly. Who taught you? Wenwen? Question mark. He rolled his eyes and apologized in his heart. Then, he said self-righteously, Uncle Yuan taught me. Fu Yun was still doubtful, but Wenwen could not wait. He wanted to kill Uncle Yu. Hence, see you dealt the cards. Wenwen's eyes rolled. If you win, there will be a reward. If you lose, there will be a punishment. See you looked up at him. What reward? What punishment? The person who loses the most will shout, I'm a big stupid pig, a few times after losing. Wenwen imagined Siyu's expression when he received the punishment. In his heart, he laughed proudly with his hands on his hips. Fu Yun had only played Fight the Landlord with others when she was a student. It had been a few years since she came into contact with it. She even forgot the rules. She was a little hesitant and felt that she would definitely lose. Siyu glanced at Wenwen and shrugged. Sure. Chapter 122. Siyu had basically lost all the previous rounds. Even Fu Yun had won a few rounds after she got the hang of the game. Wenwen's cheeks were red from laughing. He could already foresee the scene that was about to unfold. However, very soon, Wenwen's smile gradually faded, because he kept losing and never won a single round. Fu Yun looked at Wenwen sympathetically. She was either won by Wenwen or by Siyu, so she won the most rounds. Wenwen could no longer turn the tables against Siyu. In the end, the outcome was decided. Wenwen lost 15 rounds. They decided on the number of rounds they played. Wenwen lost half of the rounds. Wenwen was speechless. He couldn't believe it. What happened to never losing a round of Fight the Landlord? Siyu smiled and said regretfully, You lost? Wenwen's head drooped. He actually lost. When he thought about having to shout, I'm a stupid pig 15 times, Wenwen's tears almost fell. Siyu covered his mouth with his cards and said pretentiously, If you don't want to be punished, then the loser should give a reward to the winner. Wenwen looked up. What reward? We have to decide for ourselves. Siyu looked at Fu Yun. Fu Yun couldn't think of a reward for a child, so she said, Why don't you say it first? Siyu tilted his head and said, So you have to call me daddy 15 times? Wenwen was speechless. He puffed up his chubby face and said, You have to be honest. You have to accept your loss. Then he shouted, I'm a stupid pig 15 times in one go. After Wenwen shouted, he covered his face and praised himself for being quick-witted. Fortunately, he had fulfilled his promise in time. There were only 3 of them here. Anyway, it wasn't the first time he had embarrassed himself in front of them. Otherwise, he would have to shout that in front of others. See you. Stupid brat. Fu Yun smiled, but she also felt strange. Wenwen had clearly accepted Siyu as her father, so why was she unwilling to call him? Fu Yun looked at the time. There was still more than an hour left. She definitely could not continue playing cards to kill time, so she asked Wenwen, Do you want to take a nap? It was already past lunch break. Wenwen, who had been in high spirits, suddenly felt sleepy when she heard the word sleep. She couldn't help but yawn. Seeing this, Fu Yun brought Wenwen to her room to rest. Fu Yun held Wenwen in her arms and patted his back rhythmically. Wenwen felt drowsy. Fu Yun Ruoa suddenly asked, Why doesn't the baby call me daddy? Wenwen's eyelids, which were about to close, suddenly opened. He twisted his small body and clasped Fu Yun Ruo's collar with his fingers. Fu Yun Ruo waited patiently for a long time before she squeezed out a sentence. I can't say it. It wasn't that he didn't accept Siyu, but he realized that compared to the grudge in his heart, he was more afraid of losing him. It wasn't easy for him to have both parents in this life. How could he not cherish it? He acknowledged Siyu, but every time he wanted to say those 2 words, he couldn't say them. Wenwen was in low spirits. Fu Yun Ruo hurriedly comforted him. It's okay. Don't force yourself. Wait until you can say it. Then she hurriedly coaxed Wenwen to sleep. Wenwen was unhappy. He closed his eyes and rolled his eyes. In the end, he quickly fell asleep under Fu Yun Ruo's gentle comforting. Fu Yun Ruo looked at Wenwen, who was sleeping innocently, and lowered her head to kiss his forehead. She also closed her eyes and fell asleep. Wenwan was woken up by Fu Yunruo. When he woke up, he was very unwilling to open his eyes and acted coquettishly. Fu Yunruo woke up naturally. She accompanied Wenwan to lie down for a while and woke up a little. Then, Siyu knocked on the door. The plane was about to land. Fu Yunruo wanted to wake Wenwan up. Perhaps it was because the child had slept late last night and didn't take an afternoon nap, so he didn't get enough sleep now. Mummy, Mummy, I'm sleepy. Wenwan's little legs and hands waved in the air for a while before he turned over and fell asleep again. Fu Yunruo hesitated for a moment and couldn't bear to wake him up. After the plane landed, Siyu Ruo came in and carried Wenwan, who had not been woken up, out with one hand. Then, they got off the plane. It was evening at this time. The sunset at sea level dyed the sea and beach not far away with a dazzling orange-red color. It was breathtaking and amazing. Fu Yunruo didn't know where this place was. When the sea breeze blew, it was extremely cool. The temperature and air here seemed to baptize people and made them feel comfortable. Under their feet was a platform built at a high place. It was specially built for landing and taking off private planes. The place was very big, and there were 3 private planes parked as far as the eye could see. It would take a long time for them to walk out of the airport with just their 2 legs. However, Fu Yunruo noticed that there was a limousine parked not far away from them. There were also many handsome young men wearing sunglasses and white uniforms. The moment Fu Yunruo and the others got off the car, the young men went forward respectfully. Sir. Then, they greeted Fu Yunruo in unison. Fu Yunruo looked at the tall young men. She looked very calm on the surface and nodded with a smile. However, she was panicking inside. What was going on? What kind of family background did Siyu have? Why were there so many bodyguards just to pick them up? Then, the limousine slowly drove in front of them. The young men opened the door and invited them to get in. The limousine was very tall and spacious. After Fu Yunruo got in, she first looked at Wenwan. He might have just been woken up. He was lying on Siyu's shoulder and rubbing his eyes with his chubby hands. He opened his eyes slightly, and after seeing Fu Yunruo, he closed his eyes in relief. Fu Yunruo couldn't help but ask, "Is this your home? Could it be that they were tricked into coming here?" Siyu said, "No, this is my private island. I come here for a vacation when I'm free." This was his private territory. Other than his family, no one could come here without his permission. Fu Yunruo. She finally realized how powerful this man's background was. This was a man who owned a private island. The terrain of the island was cone-shaped. The most central area was also the highest geographical position. After driving for more than 10 minutes, they saw a European-style castle embedded in the mountains and green forests. The owner's residence was the largest castle in the middle. Fu Yunruo thought that she was experienced and knowledgeable. However, at this moment, she felt like she was a country bumpkin who had just entered the city. Everything she saw was strange and amazing. Siyu placed Wenwan in a room and let him continue sleeping on the bed. This room was obviously specially tidied up. It was very big and was divided into several rooms. It was filled with a childish atmosphere. Fu Yunruo took a few glances at it. The cloakroom was filled with children's clothes for Wan Wen's current figure. There were casual and formal clothes for all 4 seasons. Fu Yunruo felt that it was too exaggerated. When it was autumn and winter, Wan should grow a little taller. Even if he didn't grow taller, his small body would become rounder. These clothes wouldn't fit him well. There was also a bathroom. There was a very big bathtub. Fu Yunruo could even swim in it. If no one was watching, she definitely wouldn't dare to let Wenwan go into the water alone. Other than these, there was also a leisure game room for Wenwan to play. Fu Yunruo wanted to wake Wenwan up. Children slept too much in the afternoon and wouldn't be able to sleep at night. However, she was stopped by Siyu. It was fine to sleep a little more occasionally. Anyway, children slept a lot. Sleeping more was good for their health. Siyu said, "Your room is just next door. Do you want to take a look?" Fu Yunruo thought for a while and nodded. Although it was next door, it was still a distance away. Fu Yunruo went in to take a look. Her 2 suitcases were placed quietly at the conspicuous side of the room. Siyu asked, "Do you want to rest for a while?" Once one took a vehicle for a long time, their body would feel tired even if they didn't do anything, whether they were lying down or sitting. Fuyan Ruo felt that she needed to tidy up and familiarize herself with the environment. Siyu Ruo left first. Fuyan Ruo walked around the room. There was also a special cloakroom and a bathroom for bathing. The cloakroom was even bigger than Wenwen's room. There were clothes, shoes, bags, all kinds of high-end custom-made brands. She casually opened a drawer, and there were actually jewelry inside. Fuyan Ruo was stunned. Perhaps this kind of cloakroom was the dream of all girls. Although Fuyan Ruo wasn't a materialistic person, when she saw this, her mood became very good. Even if she didn't accept it, it was good to look at it. After looking at it, Fuyan Ruo was a little nervous. Previously, she only wanted Wenwen to have more family members who doted on her. Now that she saw that Siyu's family background was so good that it was beyond her imagination. It was just like those super aristocratic families that were written in novels. Oh, she forgot again. This was a novel world. Such an aristocratic family was very particular about matching families, right? Would Wenwen not be accepted? However, Siyu had always assured her that his parents liked Wenwen very much. A man's mouth was a ghost that lied. What if it wasn't true? Forget it. Forget it. She would pay more attention when the time came. If Wenwen was really wronged, then she wouldn't come. Anyway, she would take care of the child. On the other side, Siyu also encountered a neither big nor small problem. As soon as he came out, a housekeeper came to report that his parents had arrived before him. Although Siyu now had full control of the family, his father was the previous head of the family. If he really wanted to hide something from him, he could hide it for a few hours. Furthermore, he wouldn't monitor his parents. If it wasn't necessary, he wouldn't investigate their whereabouts either. In the end, they actually acted first and came over without asking. Siyu's parents considered that their daughter-in-law and grandson weren't prepared, so they didn't stay here. Instead, they stayed in another castle. When Siyu went over, his parents were sitting on the sofa intimately leaning against each other and talking to their cell phones. I think this angle looks good. Let's make a photo and hang it on the wall. Let's make a few more. My grandson is so good-looking. He's so cute. He doesn't even need to be refined. Hey, look. The fan club posted a clip of my grandson. Let me see. Wow, he's so good. So many fans are praising. Wait, is this an anti-fan? He speaks so strangely. Hurry up and kick him out. He must be an anti-fan. See you. No, he hadn't seen them for a while. How did they become so good at playing the fan club? Back when he was in the entertainment industry, he didn't see them join his fan club. Siyu coughed loudly. The two of them didn't even look up. They were completely focused on their cell phones. He actually wants to add us back. He even wants to lie and say that he's my grandson's true fan. He had discerning eyes and had seen all kinds of people. One look and he could tell that this was an anti-fan. Was he trying to be a mole? It would depend on whether they agreed or not. Blacklist him. Report him. See you. Chapter 123. Father, Mother. Siyu raised his voice slightly and called out. Sijong, who was Siyu's father, looked up and glanced at him. You're not deaf. You don't have to be so loud. That's right. Xiejiyun looked at him unhappily. He was disturbing them from watching Sun Sunday. Siyu was speechless. His voice was actually not very loud. Siyu sat down on the sofa. Why are you here? Xiejiyun sighed. We can't help it. Our son is so useless that he can't even marry a daughter-in-law. Our hearts are filled with longing. Siyu was speechless. Aren't you just adding to the trouble? Sijong said unhappily. We know what we're doing. Why are you worrying? Who asked your son to be blinded by your good looks? Xiejiyun patted Sijong's hand and gestured for him not to be angry. Then she looked at Siyu. Don't worry. We won't appear rashly. We just want to take a look at our darling from afar. Siyu was worried. Ruoruo was not ready to meet his parents yet. If they couldn't resist and appeared, wouldn't he lose even more hope? Siyu thought about the gossip he had heard about the rich and powerful. He looked at the two of them and said, Are you trying to test me? Xie immediately pulled a long face. What do you think we are? Do we look like people who care about status? Xi frowned and said, we are very satisfied with Roro. You're the one who is useless. You don't even have a status. If word gets out, you'll embarrass your father. He was the world's most handsome male celebrity. If he couldn't even get a daughter-in-law, what was the use of having such a face? That's right. As long as you don't bring a daughter-in-law home, we'll be even more satisfied. She thought for a moment and felt that she had not expressed herself clearly, so she added, even if it's a man's wife, as long as there's no problem with her character, we'll accept her if you like her. They were very open-minded. Even if their son wanted to spend the rest of his life alone, they wouldn't have any objections. After all, the C family had a lot of heirs. When the time came, they could just adopt them. It wasn't as if they hadn't adopted anyone in the history of their family. Of course, there was also another reason. When the child grew up, they could not control him even if they wanted to. Cuy's mouth twitched. He really had to thank his parents for being open-minded. What are you doing here? Why aren't you going to accompany your future wife and child? Not long after, Xie waved her hand and chased her away. They're unfamiliar with this place. Without you by their side, they won't feel safe. No wonder his son hadn't managed to win her heart yet. It wasn't without reason. Look, he was too insensible. Ciyu thought about it and agreed. Hence, she bid farewell to her parents and returned to the main castle. When Ciyu arrived, the castle was quiet. He casually asked the servants at the side. After hearing that they hadn't come out of their rooms, he went upstairs. He knocked on Fu Yunruo's room door. Fu Yunruo had just sorted out her luggage and was sitting on the sofa playing with her phone. She had just arrived and wasn't familiar with the outside world, so she didn't go out rashly. Speaking of which, she hadn't told Uncle Gua and the others that she was safe. The signal here was normal, and she could still go online. However, there was no positioning here, so she knew that this private island was in the Pacific Ocean, but she wasn't sure of the specific location. Fu Yunruo contacted them one by one. Before she finished chatting, she heard a knock on the door. She opened the door. Mr. Yu, Ciyu asked, do you want to go out for a walk? Fu Yunruo thought for a moment and nodded. Hence, Ciyu brought Fu Yunruo for a walk nearby. The castle was very tall and big. There was a big garden outside, just like a palace. Along the way, they met many people wearing several kinds of uniforms. Some of them were wearing maid outfits. Fu Yunruo observed them for a while. They were mainly responsible for the hygiene and cleaning of the castle. There were gardeners in the garden to manage the flowers and plants. There were also teams of bodyguards patrolling outside. Ciyu and Fu Yunruo stood at a high place. From here, they could almost see the entire island. At this time, the sky was gradually darkening. The lights in the castle had been turned on. Under the dim sky, it was dazzling. Fu Yunruo sighed. There were so many people taking care of everything on the island every day. The owner might not even stay here for a month in a year. There are many interesting projects on the island. When the time comes, we will bring Wenwen along and have fun. Fu Yunruo nodded. The biggest reason why she agreed to come on a trip was because she wanted Wenwen to be happy. She did not want to be traumatized by the previous incident. The sea breeze was very strong. After a while, Fu Yunruo felt that it was too cool. Ciyu immediately shielded Fu Yunruo from the wind and said, let's go back? Okay. They did not walk far, but the place was big and there was still a distance. In the end, they took a car back to the castle. As soon as they walked into the house, they heard a lot of movement in front. Young master, run slowly. Don't fall. Young master, young master. Fu Yunruo looked up and saw Wenwen running in front. Behind him was a group of young maids. His short legs ran very fast. A group of people followed behind him and did not dare to stop him. They only chased after him, afraid that he would accidentally fall. When Wenwen saw Fu Yunruo, his eyes lit up. He changed his direction and ran towards Fu Yunruo. Mother, where did you go? Wenwen woke up in an unfamiliar place. He was originally sleepy because he had slept for a long time. However, when he saw his surroundings, he instantly woke up. Before he could do anything, 2 rows of maids came in one after another. They were all smiles and wanted to help him get up. He was shocked. He slipped off the bed, passed through the crowd, and quickly ran out. When came out of the room and saw the unfamiliar corridor, he almost thought that he had transmigrated. The maids behind him had already chased after him. When was so shocked that his short legs ran very fast. Oh my God, what was going on? After running for a while, when saw Fu Yunruo walking towards him, he immediately felt relieved. He did not transmigrate to a strange world. Fu Yunruo said apologetically, "Mother went out for a walk." When the maids saw Siyu and the rest, they all stopped and stood a distance away. "Teacher." When hugged Fu Yunruo and turned his head to look at them. Siyu glanced at the maids and waved his hand to dismiss them. Yes. The maids looked at when Ruo and reluctantly left. When immediately patted his small chest exaggeratedly and looked relieved. "Mother, where is this? I was wondering where I was when I woke up." The moment they woke up, they were in a different place. It was as if they were in a different world. "We are in the castle on the island where we are on vacation. This is your Uncle Yu's home." Fu Yunruo was also shocked when she saw it. She felt that it was not the same as her world. Siyu said, "Dinner is ready." It was already so late. Fu Yunruo also felt hungry, so she nodded. Then, Siyu brought them to the dining room. The dining room was a little big, and the tables and chairs were made of expensive materials. Everything else was fine. The dinner was the Chinese dishes they were familiar with, but the taste was much better. Because they were not used to being served, after the dishes were served, the housekeeper left with the others. Fu Yunruo and Wenwen were more at ease. Their appetites were good, and they ate until they were full. He looked up from the empty children's bowl and said, "Mother, I'm done eating. Are you full?" Wenwen Ruo rubbed her round belly and said, "I'm full." Wenwen Ruo sat on the special children's chair. Her short legs were hanging in the air and swinging around. He looked around the spacious dining room. Although he did not walk through the entire castle, just from the interior of the building, it was similar to the castle in the vampire count on TV. The only difference was that it looked more modern and magnificent. It did not have a gloomy and treacherous feeling. When Ruo asked curiously, "Uncle Yu, aren't you afraid?" When he thought about living in a castle at night, would he think of strange things? Siyu Ruo said, "What's there to be afraid of as a man? Or are you afraid?" His private island had the highest security level. "It's okay. You're still young. When you grow up, you won't be afraid." The entire island was monitored by all signals. There were also shielding devices to prevent detection from the outside world. There were maids and servants inside and countless bodyguards patrolling outside 24 hours a day. When Ruo immediately puffed out her chest and said, "I'm not afraid. You're the one who's afraid, right?" There were people everywhere. How could he be afraid? Fu Yunruo looked at the big and small arguing and held back her laughter. After dinner, when Ruo was very energetic. Then, they began their exploration of the castle. Every time when Ruo walked for a while, he would encounter many maids and servants. Most of them were foreigners or mixed-race people, but they spoke Mandarin very fluently. At first, when Ruo would be frightened. When he was at his richest, he had never hired a nanny, let alone such a scene. However, he quickly got used to it. When Siyu Ruo saw this scene, she only raised her eyebrows. In the past, when their family came here, these servants would all perform their duties. When they didn't have to work, they wouldn't take the initiative to appear in front of them. What was going on today? One by one, they all came out to make their presence known. Siyu Ruo looked at their gazes and thought to himself, "Isn't it just a little brat? Why are they so interested in him?" The servants were originally very careful, but when they saw that their master didn't reprimand them, they all ran out to meet the young master. Their young master was very cute from head to toe. At first glance, they couldn't help but like him. Fu Yunruo had been following Wenwen Ruo and saw him running up and down everywhere, still full of energy. Fu Yunruo felt tired after walking for an hour. She looked at the lively Wenwen Ruo and thought to herself, indeed, he slept too much in the afternoon. Otherwise, how could he be so energetic at night? Next time, I definitely won't let him sleep too much. In the end, Siyu took the initiative to take over the responsibility of accompanying the child. She was responsible for exhausting the child's energy before bringing him to take a bath and swim. When he came out of the bath, he was drowsy. When Fu Yunruo saw that the child had finally stopped, she heaved a sigh of relief. Children were really too energetic. Taking care of a child was hard work. Siyu said, "You should rest early too. I'll bring you to play tomorrow." Fu Yunruo nodded in agreement. The next day, the vacation on the island officially began. Siyu was the most familiar with this place, so the itinerary was basically arranged by them. Since it was by the sea, they naturally had to go swimming, surfing, sailing, fishing. Fu Yunruo had never tried such an exciting activity like surfing before. However, with Siyu bringing her along, she finally experienced it. It had to be said that it was really exciting. There was also a glass room built on the island for viewing the underwater world. It was transparent on 3 sides, so they could see the underwater world without going into the water. They could also go into the water because there were submarines that could go deeper and further into the underwater world. Fu Yunruo and Wenwen had been constantly opening the door to a new world these days. When they were tired of playing outside, they could not look out. There were also many activities on the island. If they did not want to move, they could casually find a place to sit and enjoy the surrounding scenery for a day. In the beginning, Wenwen followed Fu Yunruo closely. After familiarizing himself with the island's environment, he did not have to see Fu Yunruo anymore. The servants in the castle had gotten a lot of strange and new toys from somewhere. He heard that they were played by children from other countries, and he found some of them interesting. Moreover, these people knew a lot of games. He also felt that it was very good. When Ruo slept with a smile because he was very happy every moment of the day. He found a football in the toy house with the autograph of a famous player on it. This football was now his favorite. When Ruo looked down at his short legs and decided to play more football so that he could grow long legs as soon as possible. Going out to play was also a very tiring thing, so sometimes they would not go anywhere and stay in the castle. At this time, when Ruo was playing with the football on the lawn outside, it was just that the football rolled around too much and was not under his control. If he accidentally kicked it hard, the football would roll all the way forward. When Ruo chased from behind, not long after, he saw that the football was blocked and stopped next to a pair of leather shoes. Chapter 124. Then, he said politely, "Uncle, this is my football." When knew that there were many bodyguards around, and there were maids watching him not far away. They did not do anything, which meant that this strange person was not dangerous to him and could be approached. The bearded man approached When raised his head even higher. Looking closer, he found that this person was even taller, about the same height as Uncle Yu. The bearded man stopped in front of Wenwen, then squatted down and handed the football to Wenwen. He tried his best to say in a kind voice, "I'm not an uncle, I'm a grandpa." Wenwen looked up at the short black hair under his hat, then carefully looked at the skin under his beard. He felt that calling him grandpa did not suit him well. Wenwen took the football and thanked him seriously. "Thank you. You're welcome." His low and deep voice suppressed his excitement. He raised his hand tentatively, wanting to touch Wenwen's soft hair. He was very careful, as if he was afraid that he would hurt her. He was afraid that he would use too much strength. Wenwen looked very approachable, but in fact, he would not let people who were not close to him touch him. However, he felt that the person in front of him did not have any ill intentions towards him, which inexplicably made him have a good impression of him. For some reason, he stood there obediently and did not move. After being touched on the head, Wenwen felt strange and embarrassed again. Then, he hugged the ball and ran away quickly. The bearded man watched the little cutie's back as she ran away. It was not until she left the lawn that he retracted his gaze. He looked at his big hand and smiled. His good grandson was so soft and obedient. If there was something that Fu Yun liked the most about this island, it would be the Four Seasons garden. Because she raised flowers, she naturally liked these plants. When she saw the well-taken care of garden, She could not help but ask the gardener in charge of the garden for advice. Fu Yun also met a female gardener who was very knowledgeable about flowers. Fu Yun felt very comfortable communicating with the gardener, and she also learned a lot of experience. Although raising flowers was not easy, as long as she understood a little about the habits of other flowers, she could quickly raise them. If Fu Yun received permission, she would also take care of these flowers. Fu Yun really wanted to take some photos and share them with flower lovers, but because of the trending topic, she did not post anything for a few days and even took a break from her live broadcast. However, this did not affect her mood to record this beautiful scene, even if it was for her own enjoyment in the future. Fu Yun did not take a panoramic view. Instead, she zoomed in and took a picture of a flower or a bouquet of flowers. Your photos are really beautiful. You can even compare to a professional photographer. When the female gardener saw the result of Fu Yunrua's shooting, she did not hide her amazement. This shot had frozen a flower in its most beautiful state for eternity. Beautiful Aunt Yun, you flatter me. I just learned some photography skills online. Back then, she had wanted to take photos and videos of Wen. Later, she had taken photos of orchids and edited videos. Perhaps it was because she had some talent that she was unexpectedly likable. After Aunt Yun finished looking at the photo, she praised Fu Yun with a smile. What a good girl. Not only does she raise flowers well, she also knows how to take photos. That's great. No. Fu Yunrua was really embarrassed. Aunt Yun was the first person to praise her in front of her all the time. Although her fans often praised her, most of them were online, so her feelings were not that deep. Now that she was being praised so straightforwardly, it made her blush. That son of mine, to be honest with you, really dies. Even his father is not like this. Aunt Yun sighed. Fu Yunrua exclaimed, what a coincidence. My son is like this too. That son of mine is not bad looking, but he can't do anything. Aunt Yun complained. He likes a girl, but he can't get her even after chasing her for a long time. Aunt Yun is so good. Your son must also be an outstanding young talent. With sincerity, he will definitely get what he wants. Aunt Yun smiled even more happily. Thank you for your auspicious words. I just hope that he can settle down, and we can live a happy life with our grandchildren as soon as possible. It will definitely be very soon. Fu Yunru had just finished speaking when she suddenly thought of something and asked curiously, Aunt Yun, how old is your son? My son is already in his 30s. He's much older than you. Fu Yunru was stunned. You look so young. I thought your child was at most in junior high school. She was still wondering why she got married and had children so early. Aunt Yun was overjoyed. I'm almost 60. Fu Yunrua exclaimed. You look at most 40 years old. Fu Yunrua felt that it would be great if she could be in this state when she was 60 years old. She must ask Aunt Yun for her beauty tips. Fu Yunrua did not put on makeup often, but it did not mean that she did not like to be beautiful. The two of them were chatting happily when Wen ran in from outside. Mom. Aunt Yun's eyes lit up when she saw Wen. Fu Yunrua saw that Wen's cheeks were red and sweaty from running, so she took out a tissue and wiped his sweat. Is it fun? Wen nodded. Aunt Yun walked over. This is Wen, right? What a cute child. Wen looked over curiously. Fu Yunrua introduced. This is my son, Wen. Then, she asked Wen to address him. This is... Fu Yunrua paused for a moment. If she called her aunt, then wouldn't Wen have to call her grandma? But why did she look so young? It felt weird to call her 2 generations older. Aunt Yun smiled and said, just call me Grandma. There was a hint of anticipation in her eyes. Wen could not help but look at her a few more times. Just now, there was a strange uncle who wanted him to call him Grandpa, and now there was a strange aunt who wanted him to call her Grandma. Wen thought to himself, could it be that these were Uncle Yu's parents, which meant that they were his biological grandparents? The bearded man just now had his face covered, so he could not tell. The person in front of him did not look much like Uncle Yu. Fu Yunrua saw that Aunt Yun had taken the initiative to address her, so she asked Wen to call her Grandma. Wen called out obediently. He looked at Fu Yunrua, who did not know anything and sighed in his heart. He had to watch his mother closely in the future. What if she was too stupid and got cheated? Are you thirsty? Are you hungry? Let's go eat something? Fu Yunrua asked for Wanwen's opinion. Usually, after exercising, one would need to replenish their water. When Aunt Yun heard this, she did not care about being happy and hurriedly said, "Then let's go in quickly. Don't be thirsty or hungry." Fu Yunrua nodded and said goodbye to Aunt Yun. Then, she held Wenwen's hand and returned to the castle. After they left, Aunt Yun stood in the garden for a while before putting down the watering can and leaving for another castle. When she entered the living room, she saw Sijung sitting on the sofa in a daze, looking at his hands. She looked away in disgust. That beard was really irritating to the eyes. "Gigi, I touched my good grandson's head." Sijung saw that his wife had returned and hurriedly raised his hand to show off. When Xiejian Rua heard this, she hurriedly walked over and touched Sijung's raised hand with all her strength. She thought jealously, "I haven't touched my good grandson's head yet." However, Xiejian Rua said proudly, "My good grandson called me grandma." What? Sijung Rua was jealous. He had not heard his good grandson call him grandpa yet. These two people were Siyu's parents. Originally, they only watched from afar every day and watched the surveillance cameras more often. However, when they saw the mischievous and cute Sun Ming, their hearts beat faster, and they were no longer satisfied with watching from afar. Thus, they thought of disguising themselves. Siyu's face was completely inherited from Sijang's. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the two of them were relatives. Thus, he covered his face and disguised himself as a passerby. Xiejian Rua disguised herself as a gardener because she noticed that her daughter-in-law and grandson often rested in the garden. This way, she could see her good grandson up close. However, she did not expect that she would become friends with her daughter-in-law despite their age difference. After interacting with her daughter-in-law, Xiejian Rua became even more fond of her. Unfortunately, her son was disappointing and had not married her daughter-in-law yet. Siyu Rua, who had been a step late and was still thinking about how to tell Fu Yun that his parents had also come to the island, was speechless. Chapter 125. When Siyu heard the news, he walked into the house and saw his parents arguing. He rubbed his forehead helplessly. Was Wenwen really that attractive to them? How could they disregard their image and try all sorts of ways to get close to her? He didn't know that his parents had such a side to them. When Xiejiun saw Siyu, she looked away in disdain. Siyu called out, but before he could say anything, Xiejiun suddenly said, "Son, come here." Siyu walked over and sat down. Xiejiun said meaningfully, "With the way you're going after her, I don't think you'll have any results even after 2 to 3 years. Siyu raised his eyebrows and sat up straight. "It's easy for your relationship to warm up when you go out to play, but with a child around, she won't pay full attention to you, right? I'll be positive. Yes, and at most, I'll let her feel that it's good for her child to have a father. What else can you do? You're not someone who will suffer for the sake of your child, and neither is Ruoruo. His parents were one of the people who understood him the best. I can see that she likes you, but this isn't enough for her to make up her mind to be with you. What you need to do now is to let her feel your feelings without any misgivings. If you don't express it clearly, Ruoruo will inevitably think that you want to be with her for the sake of the child. If you two don't have feelings for each other, this kind of marriage won't last long. Girls always have longing for marriage and love." When Xiejian finished speaking, she couldn't help but pat Siyu. This child had lived so long in vain. He didn't even know how to chase someone. If her daughter-in-law ran away in the end, she would kick him out of the house. Siyu was deep in thought. This was his first time chasing someone, and he was relying on his instincts. He thought that if he made it obvious, the other party would be able to feel his feelings. Siyu thought that the little guy had been playing for so many days, and it was time for him to learn. Thus, when Siyu returned to the main castle, he mentioned this matter to Fu Yun and Ruoro, the originally carefree Wenwen. No, he had not had enough fun yet. Fu Yun felt that it made sense. Wenwen had been playing for more than a week. The children in China had already started school, so Wenwen couldn't play anymore. Therefore, she ignored Wenwen's protest and agreed to Wenwen's lessons. Under the merciless suppression of the two mountains, Wenwen could only stay at home and follow the teacher to class. When Fuyan saw that Wenwen's class was on the right track, she did not accompany him all the time to avoid disturbing him. Siyu could finally enjoy the couple's world with Fu Yunruo. He took advantage of the fact that the child was not paying attention and took Fu Yunruo out. "I'll take you somewhere." The island was actually very big. Previously, they had mostly played at the beach and in the castle. This time, Siyu brought Fu Yunruo to explore the island. The two of them put on casual clothes and carried their backpacks. Before they set off, Fu Yunruo was still a little hesitant. "What if Wenwen looks for me? There are so many people in the castle." "Don't worry. When a child grows up, he can't stick to his parents all day long. He has to be independent." In the end, Fu Yunruo was still coaxed away by Siyu. They went to the other side of the island. The mountain walls here were steeper, and the environment was as natural as possible. Siyu considerately protected Fu Yunruo all the way up. Fu Yunruo thought that it was a good thing that she did not bring Wenwen along. This environment was really tiring. However, it was good to climb the mountain occasionally. The two of them walked for about an hour before Si said, "We're here." Fu Yunruo was supported on a big rock. Standing on it, she could see the endless sea. Not far below her feet, the waves hit the submerged reef. The sea on the other side of the island was calm and beautiful. The waves here were turbulent and more dangerous. Siyu Ruo sat next to Fu Yunruo. Fu Yunruo looked around. She did not understand why Siyu brought her here. Although they could see a corner of the island and the scenery was quite beautiful, there was nothing breathtaking about it. Siyu Ruo was the first to break the silence. "Ruoru." "Yes? Let me introduce myself." Siyu Ruo said seriously. Fu Yunruo was confused. They had known each other for so long. Why did he have to introduce himself? "It's not just about knowing each other. It's about knowing me completely. I'm the current head of the C family. You might not have an impression of the C family. It's actually the Jinshi Financial Group." Fu Yunruo heard this and immediately had an impression of it. The top aristocratic families all knew of the existence of this financial group. However, the financial group was very low-key and did not appear in front of others. The history of this financial group could be traced back to the East Jin dynasty. It was rumored that a group of people left to escape the chaos of war. It was said that they were the bloodline of the royal Sima family. Among this group of people, someone overseas and slowly accumulated wealth and status. Until now, no one knew how much wealth they had because they had never appeared in front of others. There were many legends about them. For example, they were the descendants of the royal family. Although they were of Chinese descent, they were the only people who had multiple nationalities. It was said that they actually controlled several small countries and had armies in their hands. It was said that the descendants of this family were involved in various industries in various countries and had a certain status. There was no such setting in the novel. It seemed that the world had automatically filled in the gaps in order to allow Siyu's bug to exist. Fu Yunruo thought that only such a powerful existence could resist the protagonist's halo, right? The original owner of the body had only heard of such people. Even the aristocratic families were divided into different circles. Such people were obviously not people that ordinary people could come into contact with. This time, Siyu talked about his family background. Fu Yunruo had an idea in her heart. Fu Yunruo thought that with such a background, when one would have Siyu to protect her in the future, she would be able to live a happy life without any worries. After introducing his background, Siyu introduced himself. He talked about his height, weight, hobbies, and personality. Finally, he said, "This is the first time I like someone, and it's also the first time I'm wooing someone. I know that my performance is very poor." Siyu looked at Fu Yunruo's smiling eyes. His rare reserved expression froze. The two of them looked at each other and then couldn't help but laugh. At this moment, the distance between the two of them seemed to have shortened. Fu Yunruo felt that Siyu was much more real. In the past, Fu Yunruo always had some estrangement with him. This estrangement was perhaps because she didn't understand him as a person. Fu Yun could tell that Siyu was a meticulous person. Few people could get close to his heart. Even if Siyu treated them well, she could not understand Siyu. However, when she looked at Siyu, she felt a little more at ease. It turned out that he would feel uneasy because of her. Rainbow. Fu Yun Rua's eyes inadvertently looked behind her and immediately exclaimed in surprise. Siyu turned around and smiled. Looks like we're quite lucky. The terrain here was rather special. When the sunlight shone at a certain angle, it would occasionally refract a rainbow. The timing was also uncertain. If one wanted to see it, it would depend on luck. Fu Yun did not see the rainbow many times, so she could not help but feel happy. However, the rainbow didn't hang there for long. In less than 5 minutes, it disappeared. Fu Yun enjoyed her eyes to the fullest. Do you like it? I like it. Fu Yun nodded. There's something I need to confess to you, Siyu suddenly said. Fu Yun Rua? ? My parents came here without my permission. Fu Yun Rua widened her eyes in shock. Then, they didn't want to disturb us. They just wanted to take a peek. But, Siyu Rua looked at Fu Yun Rua meaningfully. Fu Yun Rua had a bad premonition. But what? Looking at Siyu Rua's expression, it meant that she had already come into contact with him without knowing. Fu Yun Rua immediately thought about the people she had come into contact with here. Other than the servants in the castle and the gardener in the garden, she did not come into contact with many people. Fu Yun Rua quickly filtered through the list and quickly thought of someone. Fu Yun Rua asked tentatively, Aunt Yun? Siyu Rua nodded. Fu Yun Rua looked at him blankly for a while, then covered her face. She did not do anything embarrassing, right? She had a good impression of Aunt Yun, but she did not expect. Siyu Rua smiled and said, she didn't approach you on purpose. First, she likes to play with flowers and plants like you. She just wanted to see one. Fu Yun Rua covered her face and said sullenly, I know. She was the one who took the initiative to approach her. Why didn't she think of it? Now that she thought about it, Aunt Yun was obviously not an ordinary gardener. How could a gardener have such a good temperament, be so beautiful, and take such good care of herself? Mother likes you very much. She even told me that if I couldn't make you agree to marry into the C family, she would kick me out of the house. Siyu Rua looked pitiful and aggrieved. Whether I can marry into the family or not depends on your decision. Fu Yun Rua's face turned red. Don't talk nonsense. Fu Yun Rua stood up in a panic. It's getting late. Let's go back early. Otherwise, if one doesn't see me, she will make a fuss. Siyu saw that she was walking in a hurry, so she hurried after her and said, Walk slowly. Don't fall. Fu Yun Rua slowed down her steps. They walked slowly down the mountain. When they returned to the castle, they saw Wen standing in the middle of the gate with her hands on her hips. She looked angry. As soon as he saw Fu Yun, he asked angrily, Where did you go behind my back? Wen glared at Siyu. It must be him. Otherwise, his mother wouldn't have left him to play. As long as Wen thought about how she was studying hard under the supervision of 2 or 3 teachers, and how he took the opportunity to kidnap her mother to play, she felt extremely unbalanced. They actually didn't bring him along. Chapter 126. Fu Yun Rua and Siyu looked at each other and smiled. Siyu went forward, picked up Wen and placed him on his shoulder. Then, he calmly changed the topic. How's the teachers teaching? Are you used to it? This time, the teachers were not from their country, but from another group of teachers. Wen snorted. He was so smart. How could he not be used to it? Grandpa Chef made your favorite braised pork trotters. Eat more to nourish your body. Wen said unhappily, Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? Trying to use food to distract him? So that he would forget about not bringing him along when they went out to play? Of course not. You're already a 4-year-old child. Wen emphasized, You're 4 years and 7 months old. Okay. Fu Yun Rua saw that they were talking about age, and Wen was sitting on Siyu's shoulder. She was a little nervous. Is your arm okay? It had only been a while, and he could not exert any strength. Wenwen was not light. Wenwen obviously knew that his arm had not fully recovered, so he did not dare to move. Put me down. Wenwen kept looking at Fu Yunruo. Siyu said nonchalantly, it's okay. Let me carry him. Fu Yunruo stretched out her hands. Wenwen cooperated and opened his arms. His small body leaned in front of Fu Yunruo. Siyu had no choice but to lower his body. Then, Fu Yunruo carried Wenwen over. After being interrupted, Wenwen had forgotten to pursue the matter between the two of them. He glanced at Siyu's arm from time to time. When he saw Siyu moving his arm, he could not help but feel nervous. Siyu teased Wenwen. He found it interesting to see his rich expressions. In the end, Fu Yunruo glared at him, so Siyu stopped teasing Wenwen. The three of them had a lively dinner. If Fu Yun did not accompany Wenwen much today, she would accompany Wenwen all the time at night. Only then was Wenwen happy and magnanimously let it go. Forget it, he had to go to class and didn't have time to accompany his mother, so he could only let Uncle Yu accompany his mother, otherwise she would be lonely. After coaxing Wenwen to sleep at night, Fu Yun left the room. Just as she closed the door, she saw Siyu leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. Fu Yun tilted her head in confusion. Siyu glanced at the closed door and smiled at her. Is the child asleep? Fu Yun nodded. Siyu extended his hand towards Fu Yunruo. Let me take you to another place. It's already so late, Fu Yun said. Under his focused and gentle gaze, she could not help but reach out her hand. Their two hands clasped together. Siyu pulled Fu Yunruo and walked out quickly. Fu Yunruo was afraid that he would pull too hard and dislocate her elbow, so she followed his strength and ran forward. They ran all the way up the castle's stairs and finally reached the top floor and stood in front of a door. Siyu looked at Fu Yunruo, who was a little out of breath from running. When she recovered, he said to her, "Close your eyes." Fu Yunruo looked at Siyu and felt that he was being mysterious. However, at this point, she still cooperated and closed her eyes. After seeing her close her eyes, Siyu opened the door and then held Fu Yunruo's hand and walked out carefully. Fu Yunruo's eyes moved. She really wanted to open her eyes, but she did not hear Siyu say that she could open them. Just as she was about to lose control, she heard Siyu say, "It's done." Fu Yunruo opened her eyes. At this moment, she was standing in the middle of the castle's rooftop. With her as the center, there was a heart-shaped space. The other places were filled with things that were spitting out beautiful sparks and flowers. The reflection of the galaxy in the sky and the silver sparks on the ground were intertwined and beautiful. She was still looking at them. Siyu knelt in front of her with an exquisite red box in his hand. He faced Fu Yunruo. "Miss Fu Yunruo, are you willing to date me with marriage as the prerequisite?" Fu Yunruo lowered her head to look at Siyu. When she met his focused and gentle eyes, her cheeks turned slightly red and her heart beat faster. Dating was just dating, but he made it sound like he was proposing. Fu Yunruo took a look and saw that there was a ring in the box. Who gives a ring when asking for a date? Siyu smiled and then picked up the ring. The necklace of the same color under the box glowed faintly. "I'll wait for the day when you're willing to marry me." When that time came, this ring would be worn on her finger. Siyu asked again, "Are you willing to date me?" His voice was low and gentle. Fu Yunruo's cheeks turned slightly red. It would be a lie to say that she was not moved. Fu Yunruo thought that there was probably no woman who could resist Siyu's charm. If it was marriage, she would hesitate again and again. She felt that it was too rushed and she had not thought it through. But if it was just dating, she thought that she was willing. In the end, Fu Yunruo nodded slowly under Siyu's gaze. "Okay." Siyu smiled. He stood up and said gently to Fu Yunruo, "Let me help you put it on." Fu Yunruo did not refuse. Siyu put the necklace on Fu Yunruo. He was happy but also a little regretful. He was happy that their relationship had taken a big step forward. They were finally boyfriend and girlfriend. Regretfully, he wanted to propose directly. But after thinking about it, he was afraid that it would be too rushed for Fu Yunruo. So, he changed it to dating. Reality proved that he had made the right move. "Please take care of me in the future, girlfriend." "Please take care of me, boyfriend." The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Then, They enjoyed the charming scenery around them after their relationship changed. The sparks on the ground seemed to have been there for a long time. The starry sky seemed to be just above their heads, and they could touch it. In a big city, it was very difficult to see such a night sky. There seemed to be the sound of the waves hitting the shore. Fu Yunrua's heart was very peaceful and comfortable. The two of them enjoyed this atmosphere very much. Suddenly, Fu Yunrua said, "Let the child meet Aunt Yun and Uncle officially?" They were all on the island. Fu Yunrua could not pretend that she did not know. They wanted to see their grandson so much. She could not be so heartless. At least, no matter how powerful they were, they did not want to snatch the child away. Everything was according to her wishes. Just based on this point, Fu Yunrua had a good impression of them. When she saw that they liked Wenwen very much, she had an even better impression of them. It was quite good to put aside those inexplicable concerns. After all, they were not an ordinary couple. They even had a child between them. When Siyu heard this, he smiled at Fu Yunrua. They must be very happy. Although they were preparing to meet, before they officially met, Fu Yunrua still had to talk to Wenwen about this matter and ask for his opinion. So the next day, Fu Yunrua told Wenwen about this matter. Wenwen did not have much of an opinion about this. When he heard Fu Yunrua mention it, he said, sure, he did not care. Everything would be based on his mother's wishes. Of course, he would also put his mother's wishes first. If they did not acknowledge his mother, then he would not acknowledge them either. Based on the short contact they had previously, there was nothing that made him dislike them for the time being. It was quite good to have more contact with them. Hence, Fu Yunrua told Siyu about Wenwen agreement. After that, it was up to Siyu to make arrangements. Siyu's parents were obviously very anxious. As soon as they agreed, they immediately made arrangements. If Siyu had not stopped them, they would have really come over immediately. In the end, Siyu set the time at 5:30 p.m. They could have dinner together. At 5 p.m., the butler came in to say that Old Master and Old Madam had arrived. Fu Yunrua was a little nervous. The people she was about to meet were not just anyone, but Siyu's parents. How could she not be nervous? However, when she saw them, Fu Yunrua met Xiejiyun's kind and affectionate gaze. Fu Yunrua instantly calmed down. Auntie Yun. Her gaze turned to the tall man beside Auntie Yun, and she greeted him. When she saw Siyu's father, Fu Yunrua was surprised because the two of them were so alike. It was as if they had been carved out of the same mold. However, one was the younger version, while the other was the older version. When Fu Yunrua saw Siyu's father, she could already imagine how Siyu would look like in 30 or 40 years. Good child. No matter how anxious Xiejiyun and Si Zheng were to have a grandchild, they did not neglect Fu Yunrua. Both of them gave Fu Yunrua a greeting gift. Xiejiyun still held Fu Yunrua's hand and did not let go. I liked you at first sight. It seems like we are really fated. You can't distance yourself from me just because I'm Siyu's mother. Before she knew Xiejiyun's identity, Fu Yunrua and she felt like old friends at first sight. After meeting 2 or 3 times, they treated each other as friends despite their age difference. Fu Yunrua did not know whether to laugh or cry. No. After exchanging greetings, Fu Yunrua brought Wenwen, who was standing beside her, out. This is Wenwen. Si Zheng and Xiejiyun immediately looked over. Wenwen was not afraid at all. She shouted in a clear voice, Grandpa, Grandma. Yes. Xiejiyun immediately smiled. She was so excited that her hands were trembling. Good child. Then, they expressed their excitement by giving her a greeting gift. She could not refuse. Si Zheng did not express her feelings as Xiejiyun did. However, seeing that the child did not reject her, she sat beside Wenwen and tried her best to speak kindly. She asked about her hobbies and classes and praised her from time to time. The two of them really cared about their grandchild. After a while, they forgot about Siyu and Fu Yunrua and surrounded Wenwen. Fu Yunrua and Siyu sat at the side. Siyu reached out and held Fu Yunrua's hand. She smiled at her as if to say, Look, I'm not lying, right? Fu Yunrua smiled in her heart. She was completely at ease now. She finally did not have to worry that Wenwan would be wronged. There was a lot of laughter during dinner. At first, Fu Yunruo was still reserved. She thought that they were particular about not talking while eating and was afraid that she would be rude. In the end, her worries were completely unnecessary. Si Zhengruo and Xie Ruo surrounded Wenwan. They kept putting food on Wenwan's plate and looked kindly at Wenwan. They were happier than if they were eating delicacies themselves. In the end, Wenwan Ruo touched his round belly and sighed sadly. What a sweet worry. He touched his chubby little face and felt that it was going to become rounder again. Ever since Si Ruo's parents saw that Fu Yunruo and her son had accepted them, they came to report to them every day and asked about their well-being. They could not wait to make up for the past few years that they did not accompany them. They took on the task of taking care of the child. Fu Yunruo and Si Ruo spent more time with each other. The two of them often sneaked out, and their relationship quickly warmed up. Wenwan Ruo was surrounded by the two new grandparents. Just coaxing them took up a lot of his time, so he did not pay attention to Fu Yunruo and Si Ruo's movements. When Wenwan Ruo started coaxing people, there was no one he could not coax. Not long after, Si Zhengruo and Xie Ruo became the darling of their hearts. Even Si Ruo took a step back. Si Ruo and Fu Yunruo did not mind. As parents, they could only feel proud that their child was able to gain the favor of the elders. At this moment, Fu Yunruo finally experienced the feeling of being in love. Although it was Si Ruo's first time in a relationship and did not have much experience, she did not know where he learned some experience from. Although it was very old-fashioned, it was very useful. At least, it made her happy. But she seemed to have forgotten something? She did not remember at the moment. It was probably not something important. Right. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.